said. Okay, all right, so, and it was weird, it took about 2 hours
Really?
for it to go that far yesterday. I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. We've been trying to upload to YouTube, so and the time that it's been taken either because of our internet or whatever, it's ridiculous. Anyway, so I'm sorry for the delays in getting the tapes out there.
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
All right, so just to kind of lay the foundation for what we're talking about here this is really the tool that creates the connection between the brokerage and the seller. The purchase and sale agreement is the tool that creates the link between
Buyer and the seller.
buyer and seller. Right. So the purchase and sale agreement is between the buyer and the seller. Remember, we are not a party to that purchase and sale agreement, to that legally binding contract. We as the brokerage are not a party to it. We facilitate it, we manage it, we do everything to make it happen, but we're not a party to it. This we're definitely a party to. This we have responsibilities.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we really need to make sure we're clear on, and think about different situations that occur either when you've sold in the past or when you've talked to people who've sold in the past or past customers that you've worked with. This document allows you to customize that relationship and that responsibility or that commitment to one another. So we want to make sure we're clear on it. We want to make sure that we understand how it works. But it is that contract between the brokerage and the seller. Please remember, once you've established the terms of the contract, because the contract is between the brokerage and the seller, changes to the contract are supposed to be approved by the brokerage. It's not a one-sided deal, right? You're a representative of the brokerage. But if you make a change to the contract, we need to make sure that we're in agreement to that. This is why we've set out policies and procedures related to listing commissions and given you flexibility in it. But you also should be using us as a tool when your seller is coming against you, or when they're trying to get you to do something that you're really not comfortable with or not sure about. Use us as your background. I need to check with my brokerage, because the agreement is between the brokerage and the seller. And while we trust you to make decisions, and you're making decisions for yourself in your business, it's important to have that connection, or important to have that place to go back to, especially if you don't feel comfortable with something that's being asked. I can't tell you how often sellers try to get out of listing agreements because they've tried to create an arrangement with someone outside of the transaction. So somebody comes to them and says, oh, will you sell me your house? If we cut out your brokerage, you can sell it for more money to you. And you'll see that from the listing agreement, that's actually a violation of the contract, so we can still collect our commission. You work very, very hard on listings and working to get those listings sold and to service your customers. Please don't discount what you do. And that's one of the things that we will talk about when we get to that paragraph, is holding your commission. You are getting beat up these days, not in a good way, beat up these days to drop your drawers and reduce your commission. And I think part of it is because we use the word commission, so everybody thinks, oh, it's adjustable. We don't use the term professional fee, which is what it is. You're a professional, you're licensed, you invest in yourself, you invest in your business, and now you're just going to discount your services. And I think too often we go in saying, oh, well, okay, you're asking me to reduce it, okay, I'll reduce it 1%, 2%, whatever. And you don't realize how it impacts your bottom line. We have one agent who works with an investor, and they've set limits to what the investor is willing to pay. However, when the market got stronger, the investor wanted her to drop her commission, yet his return was increasing about 60%, and she was losing about 40% when you work the numbers. It didn't make sense. How is that fair? How is that right? So we need to really look at each situation. We've tried to give policies and procedures that help guide you, but when you get into those situations, let's talk about why. I'm kind of excited. We're going to try and do a panel at our next sales meeting regarding keeping your commission intact or keeping your professional fee intact. We have a few agents that never, even in this market, have not adjusted their professional fee at any price. So we want to see maybe if there's a connection or a way that each of us can relate to what they're doing and make it our own. Maybe there's a better way to help you stick and hold to what your professional fee is. And I think we can all agree that most sellers just have to ask, will you give me a discount? Will you give me a break? And I think sometimes if we just shut up, for lack of a better term, that it holds. If we just say, no, but thanks for asking, you'd be surprised. They're like, well, okay, I just had to ask. I mean, they already know you, like you, trust you for a reason. Do they trust you as a realtor? Anyway. All right, so this guarantees compensation. The listing agreement guarantees compensation. This is an exclusive agreement between the seller and the brokerage. It is not an open listing agreement. It is an exclusive contract between the two parties saying, we will market your property, we will do our best to sell the property, and you will cooperate with us. It's also the opportunity for you to demonstrate your expertise and knowledge of the business by taking them through the listing agreement and helping them understand that you have strategies when it comes to showcasing their property and getting their property sold. And I think in this market it becomes even more relevant that you're able to talk strategy to your seller. One, I think it solidifies your position as a professional and that you're not doing this just willy-nilly randomly. I think it also lets the seller know that you're aware of what the market is and what market conditions may impact or how they may impact an offer that they get. And I think talking to them about a market that could potentially bring multiple offers and how you manage those offers becomes very relevant and sets a stage for how you manage your business professionally. So I think that this tool, key tool in our business, can be an element of strength and longevity and differentiation. The way that you handle it can set aside or create value propositions for you and your business. So I really strongly believe that understanding this document, and just like the purchase and sale agreement, I guarantee you, again, I would put money on it, that you will be within about a 30% group of people who have actually read this document. Unfortunately, many realtors do not read the purchase and sale agreement or the listing agreement. They don't understand what their responsibilities are, and it's not a good thing. It leads to disputes and frustration. Anyway, so those are the things that we want to look at with the purchase and sale agreement. There are basically two types of purchase and sale agreements. There is the transaction brokerage exclusive right listing agreement, and there's the single agency exclusive right listing agreement. We're going to focus on the transaction brokerage because we work as a transaction brokerage the majority of the time. This is one of those pieces that makes my head spin around and steam come out of my ears. Single agency versus transaction brokerage. In the state of Florida, we are not allowed to have dual agency, which means we're not allowed to be a fiduciary on both sides of the transaction. So we're not allowed to be a single agent on both sides of the transaction. There are only 8 states in the US that don't allow dual agency on both sides. In Indiana, did you have dual agency? Do you remember?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So that they could be a single agent on both sides of the transaction?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's different in the state of Florida. Do you remember single agency versus transaction brokerage at all?
Oh, I do know. what they mean, but
Right.
I don't know. But I thought you were gonna ask me about California. I don't know.
California is dual agency.
Oh, they will. Okay.
They are. They allow dual agency.
Okay.
So, whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, I'm not even sure anymore. The challenge is that we are our own worst enemy. We are by far our own worst enemy. So, when I first started in real estate in '97, whenever you started to speak with a buyer or seller, you had to provide them with a document that said what your responsibilities were. And it was what we called a transaction brokerage notification, because most brokerages worked as transaction brokers. So you had to provide that at first meaningful contact to the customer, and they had to sign it. Well, realtors are lazy, so what we were doing was, and I'll say what we were doing was we would go through the process, we would get a buyer, work with them, write an offer, negotiate the offer, and then go back and say, oh, by the way, we need you to sign this. So the buyer was signing the responsibility or the understanding of their relationship at the time we were going under contract, or after we'd already gone under contract, when the realtor realized there was some paperwork that needed to be done that was required. Lazy.
That's when they realize it. You're saying when they went under contract, that's when they realized it.
Well, it's not when they realized it, it's actually when they would actually have the form completed. They knew, we all knew we had to get it completed at first meaningful contact, but we were afraid to present it because we were afraid to say to a buyer or a seller, oh, by the way, now that we're starting to work together, here, can you sign this form? And people were put off. So we thought, okay, we won't have them sign the form until we actually go under contract or until we get really close, and we just give them the form and they sign it. Rather than learn how to present and use the value propositions that existed within creating that relationship, we would set it aside. It's one of the reasons that buyers go rogue more than any other type of customer, more than sellers. Why? Because the buyer doesn't understand that there's a relationship and that you don't get paid until it closes. So we weren't telling them that. They were thinking, well, I can go to Margot or I can go to Jessica, I can go wherever I want as long as I get my house. They get paid, what, an hourly wage, a salary? They get paid no matter what, right? Well, no, we weren't doing a good job of telling people how it worked. We were working with friends and family members, which was good, but we weren't expanding our business and helping people understand exactly how the business works and what it means to us because we were afraid. We were afraid if we talk honestly with them at the very onset that they would run away. We were pushing them away is what we were doing. So in early 2000, 2001, the state of Florida said, all right, time out. You guys are stupid. I don't know why you can't get this, but here's the deal. We will actually put it into statute 475 that all realtors in the state of Florida are assumed to be transaction brokers. We're not going to make you get the form signed anymore because you just don't know how to do it. So we'll take care of it for you. We'll write it into law. And most realtors went, oh, phew, one less piece of paper that I have to have signed. Great. Then a couple of brokerages said, oh, wait a minute. This could work for us. Why don't we go out and tell people, buyers and sellers, we'll be your single agent, we'll fight for you, we'll have a fiduciary relationship with you, so much better than those transaction brokers, so much better. Bullshit. Anyway, people bought into it. They found, the brokerage found that there was a way that they could differentiate themselves rather than based on their services or based on their relationships. They chose to try and use single agency. But here's what they did. They would have a seller sign the single agency exclusive right listing agreement. And at the exact same time they were signing the listing agreement, they were signing the transition to transaction brokerage. So, guess what? The seller transitioned. This allowed the brokerage to have other people in the brokerage show and sell their listing. Because remember, if I am a true single agent, if Margot as a seller asks me to be a single agent, she works for the Legends. Nobody in the Legends can show that house. Nobody in the Legends can actually even cross the threshold with a customer to that home. Because it's an exclusive, right, single agency fiduciary relationship. And who are all of our listings held by? They're held by our lead broker. Therefore, if our lead broker has an agent showing that property, that's a violation of single agency. So these brokerages that profess to be single agency were having the seller sign the transition to transaction brokerage at the exact same time they were signing the listing agreement. Therefore, the seller had already transitioned. Right?
Yeah.
Because the only signature on the transaction or the transition form is the signature and the date when they sign it. Right? It's not specific to a property. It's not specific to a showing. It's not specific to an individual other than the signature. Therefore, once you transition, you've transitioned. I mean, certain surgeries that you have really can't go back, you know? So it's one of those things that they used as a tool, or these brokerages have used as a tool, and it drives me crazy because I've looked at it, and there are a couple of brokerages that profess to be single agency brokerages that will say that they always are single agency. Yet if you look at their listings and you see what brokerage sold their listings, you'll see that many of their listings are sold by individuals in that own brokerage. Therefore, the brokerage had to have transitioned to transaction brokerage versus single agency. They would have had to, otherwise it's a violation of the law. So what do? They have them transition at the time they take the listing. Then they have them, all the people in their company come through the house to see if they can sell it first, right? So then, are we now violating the code of ethics? Because have we really given everybody the same opportunity, or even fair housing guidelines, have we given everybody the same opportunity? So for example, if I have a listing and I take it as a single agent, and I let just you three see it, right? And one of you has a customer that makes an offer, and we go under contract, we're 4 of nearly 12,000 realtors. How do I know that one of those other 11,900 plus realtors doesn't have a buyer who might give the seller a stronger or better offer? We don't, because they never had the chance, right? So are we really doing the best service to our sellers? Are we really giving all buyers an opportunity if we act in that manner? So you have to really watch it. So, difference between single agency and transaction brokerage. If you are interested, or if you have a customer that is interested in single agency for a listing, or a buyer who's interested in you being a single agent, let's make sure that you come to our class on single agency called Would You Rather Be Single, so that you can figure out how the best way is to handle it, and to make sure that you're right. How to handle it, how to make sure that you're disclosing all facts so that your customer knows. Because that's what really bothers me, is that these brokerages are not telling the customer, look, if you want me to be a single agent, I'll be your single agent, but here's the deal. None of the 200, 300 realtors in my brokerage can show your house. So you're cutting out X percentage of the market. So I think it's deceitful, but that's just me. Anyway, so I want to go ahead and jump into the listing agreement. In your packet, there's an example of a listing agreement. It should have the Bowens on it, I think.
I'm seeing Gregory and Felicia
The what?
Bond.
Yeah.
So since we are assuming as transaction broker, we don't need to have them sign anything.
No.
So the topic about being single agency, how can that come up?
Not true. Because other brokerages out there are saying, you know, don't you want a single agent? You really want me to list your property because I'm a single agent. So if we're interviewing for a listing, we want to make sure that we address it because somebody else will bring it up, and I'd rather have you bring it up than someone else bring it up, right? So it's one of those pieces that I think you have to keep in your toolbox, kind of know where you are in the process. In other words, ask the question, you know, will you be interviewing other realtors? And then assume that one of them will probably be single agency. And be willing to talk about single agency. Have you ever heard of single agency? Did you have single agency where you were before? Let them know that in the state of Florida, it's different, and that our two options are single agency versus transaction broker. And then understand why you want to be a transaction broker. Remember, with transaction brokerage, you have the greatest number of opportunities to sell your home to the greatest amount of people, which means we have the greatest opportunity to bring you the best terms and conditions.
I got you.
Yeah. So I think we have to be prepared. I mean, if it's a friend or family member, they're like, yeah, we're listing with you no matter what. Unless they ask the question, it's probably not something you have to bring up. But I think we need to be prepared in this competitive environment to be able to speak to what we offer and what we do and create the value propositions for us and not focus on single agency, but focus on what you're going to do and why you do it. Know why you do it, and your seller will have no problem with it.
I agree with you. None of it. I like you. Trust you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Bingo. All right, so what we usually use is an exclusive right of sale listing agreement. Exclusive right means that we are the only ones who have the right to list the property. This is not an open listing where multiple brokerages list the property and then the person that brings the buyer gets paid. This is the exclusive right in that we get paid no matter how the property gets sold. And it also gives us the right to say, well, we brought you offers, you went under contract, you didn't close, therefore we still get to be paid. So it protects you, it protects the brokerage, it protects the seller. So it's a good tool to ensure that your time and energy investment in money is going to be well placed and well spent. It is transaction brokerage, so we talked a little bit transaction brokerage versus single agency. Again, what's also really interesting is if you look at the responsibilities of transaction brokerage versus single agency, what you find is that the brokerages that profess to be single agency are trying to use full confidentiality and full obligation to differentiate. Yet if you ask the seller what they're most concerned about when it comes to limited confidentiality, all of the things that the seller usually tells you are items that we can't talk about anyway. So a seller will usually say, oh, well, I'm afraid that you're going to talk about me being willing to take a price less than maybe what we've listed at. Nope, Code of Ethics says you can't tell anybody that. Well, I'm afraid you're going to tell them what my motivation to sell is. Nope, Code of Ethics doesn't allow us to tell that either. So everything that they're concerned about us saying with limited confidentiality is already covered in the Code of Ethics to say we can't. So full confidentiality and full liability only gives the seller greater exposure. Because with single agency, the seller is responsible for everything you say. So if I slip up, and say something that I'm not supposed to say, it goes back to the seller. And if it's a legal issue, the seller can be sued because I said something out of line. It's a fiduciary relationship. The party that hired me is responsible for everything I say and do. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's the face that
I did not know that.
yeah. And that's what I think we forget to really analyze in our business. If I'm a seller and I'm fully responsible for what you say, this could be a problem, you know? We have conversations and I assume that it's going to be confidential between us and you can't use that information. Yet all of a sudden you say something over to Jessica that we've talked about that I don't want to go any further than you. Right? Now I'm responsible. If it had anything to do with making a repair, if it had anything to do with condition of a home, if it had to do anything with anything legal in the contract, that could be a problem. So the seller is completely responsible for everything that either realtor say.
Can I ask just one question? You mentioned that Code of Ethics says that you cannot talk about why someone's moving. Is that so? The actual agent can't say, "Oh, they're selling their house because they're moving across the country." You can't say that. That seems weird.
The Code of Ethics says that as a realtor, you can't discuss the motivation of a seller's sale unless the seller has given you permission.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you're trying to say. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's okay to say that they're moving across country, therefore,
They're relocating.
relocating, yeah.
Right. So, but as long as the seller has told us that's okay.
But that's important to know too.
So now you've just pinned on a perfect example of single agency versus
Right.
transaction brokerage. Because full disclosure, if I haven't given you under single agency, if I haven't given you the right to say that I'm relocating and that slips out, and then I believe that damaged me, in other words, that now I'm getting a lower offer and I'm having to take a lower offer because you told them that I'm relocating,
Right.
so they think that I need to get out of this house,
Right.
and we don't have any other offers, I could sue you. Because for the differential that I believe can be attributable to the comment that you made and any other damages. Right? So now you're completely liable for it. If I didn't in writing tell you that it was okay.
To say that. I didn't know that. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as transaction broker, you're working with a particular party to the benefit of the transaction. You should always have in writing, even from transaction brokerage, what the seller or buyer is allowing you to say,
Okay.
but you're to be working towards the benefit of the transaction, which means your focus should be the terms and conditions of the contract or in the negotiation. Should be the terms and conditions, not the motivation.
Okay.
Does that?
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah. I think that realtors don't realize the amount of liability that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I know buyers and sellers don't understand
Yeah.
the legal liability.
That was a good question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so anyway. And we do want to focus on transaction brokerage for our brokerage. We ask you not to do single agency unless you've taken the class, right? Just because we've set up some standards and some steps that we believe can facilitate the process. If your customer truly wants a single agent and you understand what it means to be a single agent, then we're good with it. We just want you to follow the right steps. Involves disclosure, agreement. All right, so the brokerage is always the first party in the listing agreement. So it's always the legends of real estate. You don't have to worry about filling anything else out. And then you're going to want to identify the seller or sellers in the transaction. Right now, it still identifies that you will identify the marital status of each individual. just like it was removed from the purchase and sale agreements, and when it was launched in March. We have form reviews coming up in June for all of the listing forms, so I would imagine by October we'll probably have a release of new forms for the listing side. And I imagine that the marital status will be removed. But for the time being, please identify the marital status of each individual, unless they're a married couple. So your choices when identifying marital status are married, single, married couple. That's it. Please don't go beyond that. Married, single, married couple, that's it. So if it's two individuals and they're married but not to each other, identify each of them as married. If they're a married couple, you can identify them even if they don't have the same last name as a married couple.
What if someone's deceased and suddenly the family's selling the home? So and there's no, obviously, a trust made, but how do you label that?
So you always want to go back to how the deed was written.
Okay.
So if the deed was written, for example, in Gregory and Felicia Bowen,
Okay.
if the deed reads that way, that's the way you would write the listing agreement,
Okay.
and then you would provide a copy of the death certificate.
Okay.
By the contract, you still labeled as married couple.
You would still identify them as married couple. Yeah. If it's held in a trust, then there's no marital status identified.
Right. It's just yeah.
It would just be the name of the trust.
Right.
Whenever there's a trust, please make sure you get a copy of either one of the first 3 pages of the trust, indicating who has the rights to sign, and or a durable power of attorney, which does limit one's rights and does allow them to sell property. If it's an LLC, company or corporation, we do want something from the company or corporation indicating who has the right to sign.
Okay.
That should all be in the file. But good question.
LLC, just put the LLC name.
Correct.
Right. And your label, there's no label either, right?
No label, right?
Right.
Yeah. But as you can see on line 5, what it indicates is as reflected on the deed. So I would always start with the deed
Okay.
to see how the deed was taken. Because if it was a married couple and they've lived in the home for years and it was taken in both of their names and one has passed away recently or even in the past, you would still identify those individuals. If they haven't changed the name on the deed yet, don't change the name.
Okay.
All right, so then we say that the seller represents that the seller has the legal authority and capacity to convey the property, and that no other person or entity has an ownership interest in the property. If the property is held in a trust or in a limited liability company, LLC, the seller agrees to provide closing attorney or the settlement agent with a copy of the trust or operating agreement for or from an LLC upon request. Please get that when you list the property. I understand it says title company or attorney that they need to provide it to, but you should have it also so that you know the right people are signing. Otherwise, we would have a listing agreement that's not valid.
Right.
So we want to make sure early on that we're talking to the right people. And the person you're talking to may have the right to make a decision, but they may not have the right to sign.
Right.
So you just want to make sure all the correct parties are engaged. The same thing that's going to be said here is if an individual buys a property and is living in it as their primary residence, and then gets married and the spouse moves in with them, but they don't change the deed to include their spouse, that spouse still has to sign the listing agreement because it's their primary residence. Obviously, if it's an LLC or company or corporation or trust, the rules are slightly different because it's an entity. So if I own a home and I get married, my spouse moves in, my spouse now has rights to 50% of the property, therefore they have to sign the listing agreement. We're going to talk about listing period now. So This is a contract, so it must have a start and an end date. Excuse me. Seller grants the broker the exclusive right to sell the real property described below, which is identified as the property, at the price and upon the terms described below, or any other price or terms as may be acceptable to the seller. Why do you think we put that statement in there? The part about or any other price and terms as may be acceptable to the seller.
To protect your investment. Time, money.
Okay, so to protect you, to ensure that you get paid, right? Right, because we may start this listing at $500,000 and the seller is thinking they're gonna get $500,000. The market may be telling them that we're gonna get $500,000, but in this market, they may end up with an offer at $550,000. So you deserve to be paid on the $550,000, not on the $500,000. Market shifts, and now things are selling at 96% list to ask price. So now we want to make sure that we make it realistic, even if we're offering it out at 500, and now we get an offer at 580 or 480, excuse me, then we still deserve to be compensated, right? So whatever terms and conditions the seller ends up accepting, we deserve to get paid on those terms and conditions. And there's an exclusive listing term. Please note that. For an exclusive listing term beginning. So in this example, May 10th, 2021, and terminating at 11:59 on November 30th, 2021. So that's roughly a 6-month time frame, right? We recommend 6 months. We recommend you don't go any lower than 4 months on your listing. We understand that the market is very active, so sometimes properties go under contract more quickly, and that's great, and may close more quickly. However, there are residual effects. There are situations which are occurring in our market, which means sometimes a house goes off of the market and has to come back on the market. So if you start to take a listing at 2 months or 3 months, you're doing yourself a disservice, because once the house gets out on the market, the interest goes high. The interest wanes after about 3 to 4 weeks. But if the property goes off the market and has to come back on, you have to get that curve back up. You have to get that interest back in the property. And so you're working very hard to ensure that the interest level of the property remains high, whether the property is on the market, off the market, or back on the market. So there's a lot that you're going to be doing. And then there's a residual factor for that group that saw the property and was very interested at the high point. There's a residual factor, so there's time that goes by. So you're looking at probably about 8 to 10 weeks that a property, once it hits the market, still has activity and life. So if you're only doing a 3-month listing, 8 weeks is already 2, 10 weeks is into 2.5. Are you really giving yourself an opportunity to sell the house at the strongest terms and conditions, right? I get that the market is condensed right now. However, you still have to consider when a property comes off the market and then it goes back on the market, what are you doing to ensure that the concept or the thought process in potential buyers isn't that there was a problem with the house? So if you think about it, you have to initially market the house, and then if it goes off the market but comes back on, you have to market 2 and 3 times more effectively to try and eliminate the perception in the realtor and the consumer that there was a problem with the house, not that the buyer backed out because they had multiple offers on multiple properties. So your job can be a lot longer and a lot more intense, which are 2 reasons you shouldn't reduce your professional fee, but also not take a short-term listing.
You could also extend the contract.
You can extend the contract, but of course the seller has to agree to extend the contract. And if they're the ones pushing for a short term, oftentimes what they're trying to do is go through as many realtors as they can. You know, oh, I'll use you for 2 months, and if you can't get it done in 2 months, then I'm gonna go to the next one.
Well, I mean, if I was about, if I know it's not doing everything clean for 2 months. Can I line up a contract? This is a way of,
Yeah. The contract can be canceled by either party. That means it can be canceled by the seller, or it can be canceled by the brokerage. I wish more of us would fire our sellers. We get in setting expectations, they have unrealistic expectations, you're all of a sudden working your fanny off and getting no movement from your seller. But we have to also, we have to write into the listing agreement anything that we agree to. And too often we agree to things and don't put them into the listing agreement, and it makes it more difficult for you, the agent, and for the seller themselves. So if an example would be, I take a listing, I'm a realtor, I think I'm taking a listing and it's overpriced. So I have a conversation with the seller when we list it, okay, I think we could probably agree that this is a little overpriced. So here's what I'm gonna recommend. After 2 weeks, we reduce it $10,000. 2 weeks after that, we reduce it another $10,000. And the seller says, okay, that seems reasonable. Now, if I don't write it into the listing agreement, and I'm 2 weeks in and I said, okay, we're gonna go ahead and reduce it $10,000 now like we agreed, until I get their signature, I can't reduce it. But if I've written it into the listing agreement, I can make the reduction without going back to them and saying, can you sign this to reduce it? I wanna go back to them and say, all right, we're at our 2 week period, I'm gonna go ahead and reduce it to $10,000 we agreed to. So you have to be really careful about what agreements you make away from the listing agreement versus what agreements you put into the listing.
I just want to ask you real, for instance, I just saw a house and the seller literally pulled it off the market to put on a new roof. So that listing agreement would be, now roofing now takes months to actually get that roof on. So what do? Cancel it, withdraw it? How do you do this? So you don't know that this is happening, but the house is not selling because the roof is old and, you know, all the insurance issues. So do you then just do, as you said, an extension for another 6 months? Or do you drop out and have to write a new one? Because this is clear with the date, you know, this is 6 months, and then suddenly you realize the house isn't moving, and it's gonna take months for State Farm to get this roof on. How do you handle that?
I think primarily you wanna make sure that you keep your listing intact.
Right, that's exactly what I was, and how do you do that? Now this has dates, so you go back and you do an extension?
You
It's a form?
amend the listing agreement.
Okay, that's simple as that,
Yeah.
okay.
You can amend the listing agreement 3 months, 6 months, whatever you think is appropriate based on the amount of time that you believe it's gonna take for the new roof to be put on.
So you take it off of MLS, right? You would,
Okay.
see, that's only for 48 hours, right? Withdraw it?
So, if a house cannot be shown
Right.
for at least 48 hours, you must withdraw it.
Oh, I see, okay.
So, but remember, withdrawn still means there's an active listing
Correct.
agreement on it. Expired means there's no listing agreement.
Okay, so how do we fix this then? So,
So you would
Withdrawn.
amend the listing agreement
uh-huh,
for whatever period of time you think is appropriate
yeah,
or is reasonable based on what is trying to be done. And then you would withdraw the listing in MLS.
okay,
So everyone knows that there's no showings, but they also know that it's still under a listing agreement.
okay,
Then, when the roof is done and you're ready to start showing again, you would just move it back to active.
gotcha.
A property can remain in withdrawn status for as long as it wants.
That I did not know.
Yeah. It will move to expired when the contract expires.
Okay,
So that's why you would want to amend the listing agreement and then enter the extended date into MLS to reflect your change in end date
Okay,
or end of the contract.
yeah.
That's fine. Very much.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so this is identified as the listing term. Please note, we're going to talk about execution date now. If the date of execution of this agreement is other than the beginning of the listing term, all terms and conditions of this agreement will be effective as of the date of execution of the listing agreement or of this agreement, other than the brokerage's obligations under paragraph 5 of this agreement. So we need to work with these two dates and understand not only what our obligation is within MLS, but how we can use them to better serve our customer. So, we're talking about two things. Listing term, and we're talking about execution. So if our listing term is 6 months, and it starts on, we'll use the same example, May 10th, and we said we went through what? November 30th? That's our listing term. If I sign this on 5/1, this is my execution date. So this contract states that our obligations start on this date,
Oh,
right? We have an obligation to the seller has an obligation to us as of this date. This is a good thing, because if our commitment to each other starts here, that means between these two dates, no one can come in and steal my listing, right? I've got it locked up. They've agreed to work with me. I've agreed to work with them. They've executed this. Anybody who comes in and tries to steal my listing, I can prove I've already got a listing before them. And you think, well, no one's going to do that. Oh, right. So you're at a cocktail party, and a good friend of yours is there, and they start talking about how excited they are that they are getting their house on the market. And you say to them, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize you were going to be selling. How come you didn't list with me? Oh my gosh, they say, I completely forgot you're a realtor. You're like, well, did you sign anything? Oh, well, yeah, I think I signed the listing. When's it supposed to start? Well, not till the 10th of May. All right, well, before the 10th of May, I'll come in and show you what I can do, and I'll give you a break on the commission, and you can list with me. Well, if the execution date is 5/1, and they're in between these two time periods, they can't. You've got it locked up. So if they put it into MLS before the 10th, and you go to put it into MLS on the 10th, and the system says, I'm sorry, this is duplicate, you can go ahead and prove that you already had the listing agreement tied up, and they would have to pull theirs out.
why don't they have the execution date in here then?
The execution date is on the last page.
Oh, gotcha.
It's when they sign.
Okay, so, okay,
So yeah, you just have to watch for it and look at it.
okay.
So, execution date, listing date.
Okay.
So now let's go to MLS rules. What are the MLS rules? Want to guess? No.
No.
You. He points at you. Great.
Hey.
Okay, so within 24 hours of execution,
Oh, that's
All
right.
right.
listing must
Be, yeah.
be in MLS.
Okay.
Right? So,
So from 5/1 to 5/10, what would be the reasoning behind that? So execution is within 24 hours of MLS, okay. So now we have a 10-day issue here. How do you, listing term, oh, see, I don't get this, the dates here.
Well, I mean, yeah, Buzz was explaining to me this rule doesn't make any sense because you have to sign it, take pictures. You know, there's a lot of steps before you actually put an MLS. So why is it 24-hour rule?
So Buzz needs to come to class to learn the tools to utilize to be stronger in his listings. And you can tell him I said that.
You come next month for this class, right?
I'd even hold a special class just for him. All right, so your questions are well placed. It makes sense. You have to have a strategy, though. We keep talking about strategies for your sellers. You have to help them understand. So we might have signed this on 5/1 because they were in town. They wanted to make sure that everything got signed, so you were ready to start on 5/10, right?
Yeah.
They were going on vacation. They were going to another city to look for a new house. Whatever it happened to be, they wanted to get this executed so that you could start on 5/10.
Right.
And you may have agreed to do that. So why? Sometimes there's different reasons for this. So one reason could be, I'm going out of town. What could another reason be that my execution date and my start date are slightly different?
So you like the contract, so no one else will still listen.
Okay, so I want to lock up the listing. What was one other thing that you said that Buzz used as a reason why this is ridiculous?
He was saying, you gotta take a picture.
Okay. Marketing prep. Right?
I guess by the time he needs to get home.
Exactly. Or he's out drinking. Anything. So there could be a lot of reasons. What about repairs?
Right. Getting it ready.
Maybe
Stage.
you and the seller did a pre-listing inspection, which I highly recommend, and you saw a couple of things that the seller said, let's get this taken care of so it doesn't come up on a future inspection. Remove a stumbling block from the negotiations, right? So maybe they want to have some repairs. Maybe, like Margot said, it's a roofing issue, right? We want to get the roofing done. So repairs, or just curb appeal, or appearance. You want to make the house look good.
Landscaping.
Sure, some minor landscaping. Maybe it's just a matter of they need a couple of days to remove all their personal pictures and clean the house up, sterilize it a little bit. So whatever the reason, and this is why I think it's important to have a strategy. If you can bring these up to your seller, or if you can present a strategy to your seller, you have an opportunity to lock up the listing. So Mr. and Ms. Seller, I understand there are a couple of repairs that you would like to finish. If I gave you 10 days to finish those, would that be acceptable? Oh yes, I think I could get everything done in 10 days. See, now you're creating a level of accountability between you and the seller, right? You're creating that connection and accountability. You're also holding them to a time frame, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna start getting all of your marketing stuff set up. And I happen to agree with Buzz, you need a time frame in order to complete all of your marketing, so that the first day your property hits the market and hits the internet waves, that it looks the best it can possibly look. So if I'm gonna have photos done, I've gotta hire the photographer, I've gotta get the photographer out there, the photographer's gotta take the pictures, send the pictures to me, I've gotta put them into MLS, and then I've gotta reorder them in MLS so they look the best. And the first 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 are the best pictures of the property in its entirety. Maybe I want a brochure. takes a little bit longer because it has to be printed and received, proofed. Maybe I want a flyer. Maybe it happens a little easier, a little more quickly, but I still need the time to get the flyers done. Thank you.
So this would be listed as coming soon, is that what we're, oh,
Okay. You're going to the right place.
So
You're going to the right place.
to give you,
So we have to deal with this 10-day window.
right,
And there are two different ways that we can deal with this window. And you just brought up one. Coming soon. Do any of you remember some of the guidelines for coming soon?
It can't be longer than, I think, 14 days.
Okay, 14 days. Perfect.
I don't think it could be shown either, right?
Sorry?
Can't be shown at during that time?
No showings. Great. You can get a 1-week extension
Oh, okay.
with MLS approval.
What do you mean by that?
The maximum amount of time that I can put a listing into MLS in coming soon status is 14 days. So if we've set this timeline up and it's the 8th and the seller says to me, Clark, I thought that the landscaper was going to deliver everything today and get it done so we could hit the market on the 10th, but they've had a 2-day delay. I really don't want the house to hit the market for an additional 2 days. That's fine. We would just need to amend the start date or the listing date 2 days so that it can be done. But because I've already put it into MLS saying I'm going to go live this day, I have to request an extension from MLS saying the seller wasn't able to get the yard completed. May I have 3 more days on my coming soon status? And MLS would probably say yes, and then it will shift so that it won't go active until the 12th or 13th, whatever you've agreed to. But any extension beyond what you initially put into MLS for coming soon must be approved by MLS. You can't make a change to the coming soon date or to the active date without MLS's approval. Does that make sense? Okay. So 14 days, no showings, maximum of 1 week extension with MLS approval.
Oh, maximum of 1 week?
Maximum of 1 week, correct. No offers presented. So a potential buyer could submit an offer, but you as the listing associate can't present that to the seller while in coming soon status.
But you can accept an offer.
You can receive an offer.
Right. You can, as the agent.
As the associate, you can
Yeah.
receive the offer, yes. You
Okay.
cannot present the offer.
Okay,
If your seller wants to see the offer, the property must be moved to active status.
Yeah, okay. I believe we saw a problem because coming soon says they had an open house schedule, and then they canceled the open house because they were sitting off.
That was the first day on the market.
Oh, that
Maybe
was
it's
the first
because,
day.
and maybe it's because it was coming soon. I don't remember when it was saying it was coming on the market, but we went and saw the property the first day it was on the market, and they had scheduled an open house for over the weekend. They received a verbal offer and they let us know, make sure you let us know if you want the house. We ended up declining, but she was telling us, make sure you let us know because I think we're gonna be canceling open house, which I was surprised. They just accepted the first offer. But
It was on the market the next day, or I thought it was
But-
coming soon stuff.
when we saw it, that was the first day on the market.
Never mind.
Yeah.
No, so, but that's a good point of differentiation. So once it's coming soon, the day it goes active, it's available. As a matter of fact, when you put something into coming soon status in MLS, showing time opens up right away.
Yeah.
But showing time won't allow a showing until it goes active.
Oh, that makes sense.
So if I submitted an offer during the coming soon period, the offer can't be presented until we go active, or until the listing goes active. However, if when the listing goes active, the seller wants to take that offer, they have every right to do that.
Yeah.
And then cancel an open house if they want to. I agree with you, I don't know why, I mean,
Right.
they could have received better terms and conditions.
He wouldn't, he
You
doesn't
would
know why
cancel
not,
that.
why not just
Why?
keep the,
Well, I think right now everybody's getting a little nervous with the inventory increasing, so that just take the offer. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
the prices are dropping. The days on the market. Like as we saw a house that was on the market for 30 days, the first time we saw, it, we were almost gonna make a full price offer, and it's still better by a month.
yeah.
You know.
yeah, it's crazy. Alright, so we have to go to active before. Again, the purpose of this is to ensure that everybody would have an opportunity to make an offer, right? So that your seller has the opportunity to get the best terms and conditions. Remember, terms and conditions, in case we're not clear, that's a present.
Oh my God! What is that?
Hey. Everybody goes to the price, which is like the bow, but everybody forgets about everything else that's in the box. Everything else that makes a difference in the contract. The length of time for the inspections, the length of time for loan approval, whether it's cash or finance, the financing contingency, the appraisal contingency, the time for title, the time to close. These are all terms and conditions that impact the price. Everything impacts the price because the longer it's on the market, there could be longer carrying costs or greater carrying costs, so that could impact your net. If you need to get someplace else, the sheer emotion of it can impact your desirability to take an offer that is financed versus an offer that's cash but will close more quickly. So the motivation of the seller can be impacted by all the terms and conditions in the box. We forget about all of those things. So this is why no offers can be presented, because everyone should have an opportunity to make an offer if they would like to. You can advertise the property, but you must say that it is coming soon. And in a market like this, unfortunately, we have a lot of agents who are not acting properly. So they'll put a house in coming soon, and then they'll take agents from their own company to it. And it hits the market, and the first day it hits the market, it goes under contract. So let's just assume that not all realtors understand the guidelines of coming soon. So they put a property in coming soon status, saying it's not going to be active until a week from today. Yet they take agents from their own brokerage in to see it, negotiate a contract, and the first day it goes active, it goes under contract, which is a violation of MLS rules.
Well, I guess because they see it, but it says you can advertise it, but you just can't see it.
You can't show it.
You just can't see it. No.
So if I bring all the agents from my office into that listing, even though it's in coming soon status, I've already violated coming soon status. The property's supposed to be active. Because you should be able to show your customer that house. The true essence or the true guidelines of coming soon were to help us as agents be better prepared when a property hits the market. The true essence of it is to give us the opportunity to go ahead and prepare to have the property marketed correctly. To show the property in the best light possible the very first day it hits the market. The speed at which things occur in this day and age, things get out there very quickly. Within 24 hours of you putting it into MLS, it will be in Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, all of those other websites. It will be everywhere you want it to be,
Once
and
it hit active,
information
it will be
once it goes active.
Right, not coming soon.
Coming soon does not go anywhere but in MLS. But the day it goes active, it goes everywhere.
Okay, so with the terms that you have in this contract, it says it starts on the 10th, okay? But the seller, wants to do some repairs and then take 2 weeks. You lock the deal on the 10th. And it ends on the 30th. Now, this is not 6 months. It still says 6 months contract because it's actually 5.5 cents. You know what I mean? Does that matter?
Well, this is actually 6.5.
Oh,
May to November.
okay. Wow. Okay.
But to answer your question, if the execution date, so let's go back to the execution date. If the execution date is 5/10 and the listing term is 5/10, all of my obligations start on 5/10,
Yeah.
which means I've got to have it in MLS and available in MLS within 24 hours of 5/10.
Okay.
Am I ready?
Well, if you're a buzz.
If what? If you're buzzed,
Buzzed.
yeah. Whatever. But I might not be ready. This is what I'm talking about when I say you have to have strategies. So you have to share this with your seller so that your seller understands you've thought about this process. You have to say to your seller, great, we're signing our listing agreement today, we're going active today, but I gotta be honest with you, I don't feel comfortable putting you into MLS today because I don't have the flyers ready. I don't have the brochures ready. Too many realtors in this market have said, oh, it doesn't matter. I'll take a couple of photos with my iPhone. I'll throw them onto MLS. The market is crazy. It'll go right away. Here's the deal. Once you do that, you've set it into stone. And I don't know why we don't understand this. You have now taken some moderate or mediocre photos with your iPhone. I don't care how good you are or how good your iPhone is. You've taken a couple of pictures. I had to get onto one of our agents yesterday because she has a $700,000 listing with only 6 photos. And one of them is the floor plan. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on a $700,000 house. Anyway, we have to realize, just like on social media, once you put it there, good luck getting it back. So once you take a couple of mediocre pictures and throw them into MLS for your listing, every agent that you come in contact with or every agent that you come in competition with can use that against you. Oh, you're talking to Jessica? Well, yes. This is how she markets her listings, and this is how I market my listings. You've got 3 photos, moderate. They've got 6 photos, clear, concise, clean pictures. What do you think the seller's going to want?
I have a
This-
question.
yeah.
So if you have a coming soon property and you don't have a chance yet, you know that's coming soon, but to get more visibility, you take your own pictures, they're moderate, but you plan to delete them within 3 days before it even becomes active.
Right.
And you switch them out for better pictures.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a good strategy, because what you're telling the seller is, look, I want the realtor base, who's the key element to selling your house, to not only know about it early, but also be able to get an idea of what the house looks like. We'll replace those with the professional photos before it ever goes active, before it ever hits the internet waves.
Oh, okay.
So now you're telling the seller, here's my strategy, here's what I'm doing, here's how I'm working for you. We do so much that we never tell the seller about. For example, these professional photos that we're talking about, when you have a photographer that takes professional photos, how do you think they're going to take the photos? I mean, yes, with a camera, but what do you think is their process?
Lighting, just wide angle lenses and
Okay, so wide angle lenses, but how are they going to do it? They're going to come up to the house and go click, here's the front of the house, front of the house, front of the house, front door, foyer, kitchen, living room, family room. I mean, this is how they're going to go through the house. They're going to walk through the house, right? So now you're going to end up with, let's say 35 photos of the house. But guess what? This is the front of the house. This is that beautiful black bottom pool that sits in the backyard that's so gorgeous, right? And so we go, oh, well, you know, I think what I need to do is make sure that that's higher up in my photos. But we have to know what the consumer's doing. Where is the consumer looking at these photos?
It depends on the property.
Okay. So in most cases, where are they going to be looking at them? Online, right?
Yeah.
So our first showing takes place online, but where are they going?
Zillow or Realtor.
Zillow, Realtor.com, your website, right? How long, okay, has anybody been on a dating website?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't go. Anyway, but think about it. How fast can swiping take place? Think about when you are on a website and you're looking through to see if there's something of interest. Be on Wayfair and you're looking through items. Be on any do-it-yourself website and you're looking at different floor plans or different designs, right?
A limit how many you're going to look at.
You can, okay, so you limit how many you're going to look at.
Yeah, it would take too long.
Right. But if you get interested in the first couple of photos, you might spend a little more time,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. An average person is going to spend about 3 to 5 seconds with a listing to determine whether they like it or not.
Hmm.
How many photos do you think you can get through in 3 to 5 seconds?
3 to 5. I don't know.
10 to 12.
Yeah, maybe 10, yeah.
Yeah.
10 to 12 photos, right? So part of your job, which we don't tell our sellers about, is that you need to reorder this so the first 15 to 20 photos takes the individual through the entire home and shows the best view of each room or the most important rooms. What are the most important rooms? Gathering room, primary suite,
Kitchen.
bedroom, kitchen, thank you, yard, right? And of course the front.
Right.
Okay. So within the first 15 to 20 photos, a buyer should be able to really get a good feel for that home. And then if they like it, they can see the rest of the details. Or they can
Right.
go to your video, right? But we don't tell the sellers as part of our strategy, I'm going to spend, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to take you a good hour to an hour and a half to evaluate the photos, reorganize them, label them, so that they're clear and concise, that a consumer can get a good feel for your property. It's what you need to do, but we also need to tell our sellers, how much does this cost? This doesn't cost us anything other than time and energy, which of course equals money, but once we've paid for the photos, we own them. Now it's what we do with them, and it's what we tell our seller that we do with them that becomes so important. If we don't share what we do, the seller just thinks we go out, stick a sign in the yard, and the house sells. We don't talk about, one of my strategies is to reorganize the photos so that A, B, and C happens. Right? They don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, or if we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, then we end up with a property that doesn't show as well. Think about it. How many times have you gone to a property and you're like, oh my gosh, how many pictures of the bedroom do I need to see?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I get an idea what the kitchen looks like. I want to see the backyard. And you go to the little thumbnails and you have to go all the way to the end. If you're interested. If you're not interested, you go to the next property.
Yeah.
Right? So, part of the reason we have coming soon is to say, look, there are things that we need to do to ensure your property looks the best it can possibly look the minute it hits the internet airwaves. One of the things I do is rearrange my photos so that the first 15 to 20 are an excellent representation of your property. I do this because, just like you have to ask the buyers the why, you have to give the why to the sellers. I do this because I want to ensure that your property gets the greatest number of views and the greatest number of people who might be interested in a property like yours spend the time with your property. And the only way for me to do that is to make sure the first 15 to 20 bring them in and let them hang with the property. So if you give the seller a why, you're now also giving them a reason why your professional fee is your professional fee, right? Value proposition. Value propositions. All right. So originally Coming Soon was really focused on the marketing. It's really become an element of being able to ensure that you and the customer are prepared. So to the point of execution date being the same as your start date, there is another option. If you still find that there are things to be done, there's what's called a waiver of entry. And basically what this says is, I, the seller, understand that you will not be putting my property into MLS. And I won't be getting all the views. So this says that there is no public marketing. You can show the property. Showings are okay. Ready? And this can only be marketed realtor to realtor. So if I had that situation that you kind of said, well, all right, the execution date is 5/10 and the agreement date is 5/10, but there's still a couple things we need to do. I really don't want to go active until 5/15. I might start with a waiver of entry. Or if my customer executed on 5/1, but we don't want to go active until 5/10, I could still use the waiver of entry there also.
Is that like a form and the contract or something?
Yeah, we've got them both in here. I'll show you to you so you can see what they look like.
Now with this one, do you have to notify MLS or anything? This is different from Coming Soon. So this one has no public marketing, except you can go to the realtors, right? Is that what you're saying? The realtors can see it.
Right.
Now what does that, so what about the MLS rule of something must be listed within 24 hours?
So if you have a waiver of entry,
Do you notify them of that?
you don't have to notify them of that. If they get a request to investigate, then you would have to notify them of it.
I gotcha. So you don't have to automatically say I have a waiver entry.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No.
So what do you think is a better option here?
I think it depends on the strategy and the need from your customer. Here's the deal with waiver of entry.
Longer than 14 days is what you're saying. 15 to 20, right? So you'd automatically have to go into, well, no, you get an extra week. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
There's no timeline to waiver of entry.
Oh,
There's no timeline whatsoever.
you're just putting 15 to 20 down, huh?
No, this is related to the. Sorry, this is related.
Oh, that's okay.
to,
That's okay.
This is related to the photos, not to
Okay.
the amount of
Okay.
time.
Okay. Waiver. Okay.
So, what this does say is that if it goes public, it must be put into MLS,
Right.
right? So, when is this most often used? This is most
Yeah.
often used when the execution date and the start date don't equal each other.
Right.
This is also used on certain properties who may be individuals of notoriety are selling a home and they don't want people coming through their home. So they don't want it in MLS because they don't want the public in general to see that their home is for sale. It could be some high-end homes. We had one that was a $14 million
Okay,
home that was listed and didn't want to have it in MLS.
Okay.
So
Ever. They didn't ever want it on
Right.
So they want to like advertise to like word of mouth.
Yeah, so with waiver of entry, the only way that a property can be marketed is realtor to realtor.
Right.
So if I have a house that's in a waiver of entry, I might have brochures printed up and I might send you a brochure and you a brochure and you a brochure, or I might call people in our market who have sold homes at that price point and see if they have any customers and let them know that I have a listing that they might be interested in or one of their customers might be interested in. But it has to be realtor to realtor. Once it goes public, it has to be put into MLS. And this is where this can be a really slippery slope. So I take a customer in, or I call a realtor and I say, I've got this house. Do you think you have any? Yes, I have somebody that might be interested. Great, let's set up a showing. So we go, Jessica's customer is not interested in the house. Excuse me. It's really close, but not exact. Thank you so much. Okay, go away. Now they're at a cocktail party. And they start talking to a friend of theirs. Excuse me. They start talking to a friend of theirs and telling them about this house that they've seen. And now that person goes to their realtor and says, oh, by the way, I hear that this house might be available. Can you show it to me? And their realtor says, I had no idea. Let me look in MLS. I can't find it in MLS. Who showed it to you? Oh, well, their realtor was there. It was Clark. Oh, okay, great. Let me call Clark. So now that realtor, maybe Margot, calls me and says, I understand you might have a listing. Oh, yes, guess what? It's public now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't go to her, she came to me. How did she find out if I had never told her about it?
Yeah.
From someone else. And that person may have been one of many that was in a group that they were talking at the cocktail party, and all of a sudden, now all sorts of people who aren't realtors know about the listing, right? So it's technically public. At that point, it would have to be put into MLS.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's very challenging to abide by the guidelines of a waiver of entry. And the reason it's challenging is because we want to ensure that as many people who can purchase the home have the ability to see the home and purchase the home. Why? We also want to make sure that the seller has the best opportunity for the strongest terms and conditions. So it can be a challenge to do a waiver of entry. However, it's often used, and you will see we've made it a part of most of our listing packages, because it's not uncommon for someone to sign and there to be a time frame between when they sign and the listing agreement date. So this is often used to cover that time period. Coming soon could be used to cover that time period. Or here's an example. We have a listing term of May to November, but we start the conversation in January. Maybe it's an investor, and we want to lock up that listing. So we go ahead and get the listing agreement signed, but now we've got 5 months to cover, right? So we might go ahead and use a waiver of entry until 5/1, and then coming soon, 5/1 through 5/10.
Oh,
Okay. So they had time to finish their upgrades or updates. We locked up the listing. We didn't take a listing that was more than 12 months. So we've utilized our resources. We've created a strategy. We've locked up the listing. Very positive, right?
like if there's a renter in there or something and the rental, the renter has until 5/1, you can actually do this in January, do the waiver. Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, each
I didn't
situation
even
is
think
different.
about that, okay.
Each situation is different. The forms do not need to be used mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
They can be used together.
yeah,
Just
Oh,
depends
I
on the
see.
situation.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, okay. Hmm.
Poor Buzz.
We love Buzz.
I know. Me too. So that you can see what the form looks like. This is a waiver of entry.
Interesting.
It's in your resource section of your booklet. So it's the small page number. Small page number 17, lower right hand corner. And you can see that shows the listing date and the expiration date, which is referencing the listing term, which in our case are these two dates, the May and November dates. And it's called the seller waiver of entry.
Say 17.
Page 17.
That doesn't look like that. Oh, no. It just says 195. Yours didn't say that.
Oh, I don't know why that's on there. Huh. I've got this.
$250.
Oh, yours says 250.
No, you should
No,
say-
it's supposed to be, that's the transaction fee is $250.
Oh.
I don't know why
It
it's
shouldn't
here
be
on-
in there, but it
Yeah.
should be $250 anyway.
On a different page.
Yeah.
It should be 250.
No, not,
No,
not
no,
in that
no.
location. It doesn't go
It's
there.
on the wrong page, yeah.
I don't know why that's printed there.
Ah,
You can just scratch it
It's
out.
just a mistake.
Because that's definitely not the seller.
Yeah.
But you can see that the term is the item that's identified, listing date and expiration date, the parties. And then you can see down at the bottom where it says, when listed in Northeast Florida MLS, your property, so it says, it shows you the advantages to being an MLS, or tells the seller the advantages. And then the seller acknowledges, based on the firm, that we are not going to be putting this into MLS. But there's no end date.
Yeah.
So my entire listing term can be with a seller waiver of entry. The other one that you want to be looking at is on page 16, and that's the coming soon. Now you'll see the same thing, broker and seller and property. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that the date the property will be entered into Northeast Florida MLS coming soon status is, and you must identify the date that it goes active.
size is what?
So the coming soon date
Or the date?
would be the date you entered into MLS, and the active date would be the date of the starting date of the listing term. So this date would be this date or the second, and then this date would be this date. The system will automatically put it into active for you, unless of course you've petitioned for an additional
Okay.
week or additional
So-
days.
So, on this front page, I put May 10th. But on this one here, I put May 1st.
So yes, May 1st would be the date that you put it into coming soon status. That's the execution date. Remember, 24 hours from the date of execution, it needs to be in MLS. So you would put it into MLS on 5/1 or 5/2. And the status you would enter it in to MLS is coming soon. The date that it would go active would be your listing agreement date,
Which is, okay.
which is 5/10.
Now, what if the customer, we call them customer, client?
You're allowed to call them clients.
Okay, so what if the client decide during that period to not sign? Can I do that? Can I just withdraw?
During the coming soon period,
Yeah.
well, if
I know we locked the deal with the book, but they decide they don't want to sign.
right, so couple of things. If they decide they do not want to sell anymore, in other words, they want to completely eliminate the listing agreement, we would need to understand why they're eliminating the listing agreement.
They they're not giving a reason.
We may not release it then.
Okay.
You may not release it, huh?
Because
This is a listing agreement, and it's a contract. So it's a contract between the brokerage and the seller.
Right?
If the seller changes their mind, we're going to want to understand why. I can't tell you how many times sellers say, "Oh, I've just decided not to sell," and then you release them.
And they turn around and get another broker. Or,
More specifically, usually it's that someone's approached them and they try and sell it to that individual. Then it doesn't
on
work.
their own.
Yeah,
I
then it
gotcha.
doesn't work, and then they want to come back. So that's why this is an exclusive right of sale listing agreement. What it states in here is that no matter who sells it, we get compensated. So if someone comes to you, your obligation per the terms of the contract is to refer them to the brokerage.
okay. So this is a contract right here. The coming soon, I guess.
Well, the coming soon is an addendum onto the listing agreement. The contract is the listing agreement. This is an additional term or condition within the listing.
Here's no example where she ran into another realtor. Oh, why don't you listen with me? You know, I can give you a break. We can try to sell it before 5:10. Can they do that?
You have a listing agreement if, as long as your listing agreement is executed between that time period. So for example, if it's executed on 5/1 and that other realtor tries to insert themselves, they're inserting themselves into a contract that already exists. So if they then try to list it before you put it into MLS, that's why of course you want it within 24 hours in MLS, even in coming soon, because if then that realtor tries to put it into MLS either as active or coming soon, MLS won't let them.
So basically, the first person puts it out, and the last gets the one.
Not necessarily, because let's say I used a waiver of entry between 5/1 and 5/10. So I haven't put it into MLS. Now that person, that other realtor tries to insert themselves into the listing, and they go to try to put it in on 5/5, and they are able to put it in. Why? Because I have a waiver of entry. We're not putting it into MLS. If they now put it into MLS and I see it come up on MLS, then I'm going to file a complaint and prove that we have a waiver of entry and a listing agreement, and that person's going to have to take their listing out. Plus, we, the brokerage, could potentially sue them, or the seller could sue them.
So to be on the safe side, I always have the waiver of entry.
Well, anytime there's a difference between the execution date and the listing term, you have to have something.
Yeah.
Either coming soon or waiver of entry, one of the two.
So for this example, the waiver of entry, and this listing agreement says May 10, you must put whatever's just passed by date today and to May 10 for any reason, like for pictures or whatever.
The waiver of entry doesn't have a start and end date other than the listing term. So the waiver of entry on the
I see
waiver,
what you're saying now.
the waiver of entry only reflects the listing term on the listing agreement. It just says that the listing will not appear in MLS during that time frame.
Okay. You know, I don't remember signing this with us. Trust, after done saying all this, but I just want to understand this.
Oh, I understand.
I ask all these questions,
Right.
You know, get on the contract. So
Well, and this is
I
something,
would start out. I would ask questions about something for sure.
Right.
Because I remember seeing it.
I understand. I think a lot of agents forget sometimes what's necessary. And this is why I say you're going to be in about 30% of the agents that have actually read this. If you read the listing agreement, you'll see exclusive listing term. That's one thing. Then we have date of execution, completely separate. Can the dates be the same? Absolutely. Can the dates be different? Definitely. It's how you manage that time. Because we've already seen that. Where is it? Okay. All terms and conditions of this agreement will be effective as of the date of execution,
Yeah.
which is the date they sign. So our obligations start the day they sign. So what's our strategy? If our strategy is to get them to sign, for us to be prepared and then go active, we might use coming soon.
Yeah.
If our strategy is to have them sign and go active on that date, we may use a waiver of entry so I don't have to put it into MLS until I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just didn't know that there was no date after. Now I understand there's no date.
The only date that's on the waiver is the listing term, which are these dates.
Why?
So then to cancel, or like if you use this only for a period of time, it didn't specify the ending date. So you just have the right to verbalize the agreement, or do you just have them sign off that it's been cleared?
So there are two ways to eliminate the waiver of entry. One way is to create an MLS addendum that indicates the seller has elected to move from a waiver of entry to active in MLS. It's an MLS change form.
I didn't know that either.
It's an
Okay.
MLS
That
change
is an MLS, okay.
Yeah, MLS change form.
Okay.
The second way is to violate the terms of a seller waiver. What's one of the easiest ways to do that?
No public. Much.
So you just put it on there and then you're
Put a
like,
sign in the yard. Put a
Oh.
picture on social media. Put it in MLS.
but then you're at default?
You're not defaulting. You violated the terms of the waiver, but you've also done exactly what it says. Once it goes public, it has to go into MLS.
So as long as you put it on MLS, you're okay.
Yep.
So
MLS, once you put it into MLS, you've negated the terms of the waiver.
but we can't advertise it once you put this on.
If you publicly advertise, then it must be on MLS. And
If you're using the waiver of entry. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. Yeah.
But you asked me, why would sell like that the contract? It wouldn't matter. The contract is the contract, right? Well, if they start packing, they feel emotional, they don't want to sign. You know?
Okay. Then why don't we just withdraw it for 2 weeks to see how you feel?
Oh, so you can do that. Okay.
Yeah, there are a variety of different status options. We just have to understand what the status options mean. So a property in active status means it's available to show and sell. Can we agree to that? Yeah. A property that's contingent, taking backups, means that they're under contract, but they'd be willing to look at other offers and they're willing to show their house. Pended means they're under contract, they don't want to take any other showings, and they feel like they're going to go ahead and move forward. Expired means there's no brokerage that has a contract with the seller anymore. Right? Are we okay with all these so far? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Withdrawn says if a house can't be available for showings for at least 48 hours, you have a responsibility to move the property from active to withdrawn status in MLS and remove the sign from the yard
Okay.
so that a consumer doesn't believe that that house is available to see. So withdrawn would work, and I think we don't know that we need to be suspect, but I think we need to be efficient.
Okay, well,
We need to understand.
an example, the insurance thing, couple of, now the sellers have to come out hot. The seller doesn't have money. And they start locked in the contract.
Until we release them.
Okay, so there's a lot of
My point is, you should never expire a listing agreement unless we know the real reason why. In Margot's case, where the house needs a roof, and you're saying they can't afford to put the roof on, that doesn't mean that they can't still sell. Is the insurance company paying to have the roof on? Well, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know what the terms are. But if it's a matter of just waiting for the insurance company to take care of it, there's no reason to expire the listing and give them the opportunity to list with someone else. This is your business. That's your product. We need to make sure that your product stays on the shelves. So the withdrawn status allows you to go ahead and pull it off of the market for visual showings or for people traipsing through, but allows you to keep the listing. And then maybe you extend the end date of your listing term in order to ensure that you still have an opportunity once the repair or roof is fixed. Now, if it's a situation where they need a roof and they can't afford to put a roof on, it's not something that's going to be covered by insurance, and you feel like there's a reason to expire the listing and release them from their contract, then we just have to talk about it. In most cases, we'll go with your lead. What we don't want you doing is, oh, okay, I feel bad for you. Yes, of course, we'll release you. And there's a motivation or something else going on behind the scenes. I'm not saying be suspect. I'm not saying that the people who you're working with aren't going to be honest and upfront with you. But you need to protect your business.
Yeah.
From the moment you take that listing, there's an investment on your part. I don't care if the photographer hasn't come out yet. I don't care if the brochures aren't done. I don't care if you have done nothing other than walk by the house. You've still made an investment and a commitment on behalf of the brokerage, and behalf of your business, and behalf of yourself.
So what would be the reasons or certain common reasons for you have a listing with someone and all of a sudden they said, I want out? What would be your way of, not just fly-by-night type thing, but what would be a reason you would say, we're going to let this go?
So a seller comes to you and says, I thought I was going to be transferred. They're keeping my position here in Jacksonville.
Okay.
We're not going to be selling anymore. Okay.
How about if they say, we're really unhappy, okay, they make this up. We're really unhappy with our representation. Do you just bring in another realtor, or they just say, this is awful. This is just, I'm getting no people coming through.
This isn't working for me.
Right.
Great. What I would ask that you do as the listing associate is to come to me and talk to me and say, look, they want out because they don't feel like they're getting good representation.
Yeah.
Then you and I are going to have a conversation. Okay, Margot, tell me a little bit about what you've done for the listing. Tell me a little bit about how you've marketed the listing. Tell me a little bit about how you have prepared for open houses. Tell me a little bit about how you've reached out to other realtors. Tell me what you've done to try and get that house sold. Whether we agree or not, if we don't agree, I'm going to say, well, Margot, I got to be honest with you. I think you kind of put it out there and just assumed it's going to sell. And I understand that they may be upset. So here's what I'm going to recommend. Let's offer them the opportunity to meet with a couple of the other agents that you recommend in the company. Let's be fair. We'll get them to interview with the seller, and then we'll have the agent agree to pay you a referral fee. How about that?
Yeah.
And if the seller agrees, great. If the seller doesn't agree, then obviously we want to protect your reputation and the brokerage reputation. We might release them, to be fair. But I'm not going to just release a listing because they say they're not happy. Because you could have done everything you could possibly do. You could have marketed up the wazoo. You could have put it on Facebook and social media and got flyers and brochures and had 17 open houses. And they're not happy because it's priced unrealistically.
Right.
And you've had that conversation with them. Then we may need to talk about it even more. It's not you, it's them. So now do we want them as a customer? Or do we want someone else to try and approach them? Or do we just want to let them go?
Yeah.
Or do we want to refer it to an individual at another brokerage and at least get you a referral fee?
Yeah. In another brokerage. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So if they're not happy with us, Our goal is not to involve them in a dispute. Our goal is to find out what's the motivation, why have we come to this place, what are we going to do to resolve it. And there's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of things that we can do to hopefully get you a couple bucks back into your pocket to offset some of the expenses you've had. Or do we just need to take it as a write-off? Do you need to take it as a marketing write-off on your taxes for all the brochures and flyers and everything that you did? And we just say, learning experience, ABC. Do we now improve our seller consult? Do we now improve how we do our listing agreement? Great. Whatever.
Or do we charge them for all that?
Okay, that's another option. So there's a damages paragraph in here
Oh, okay.
that we
Okay.
can say, we hear you, whether we agree with you or not, can't really tell you. But if you want out, we do have a damages paragraph. We're gonna go back to that paragraph. You'll need to pay us X
Reimburse
number of
us for-
dollars.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
It's a contract.
Only because when I was selling my house in California, I said to the guy who's the realtor, I said, what if I'm just unhappy? Because you can get out any time. Just like that. That was the answer. And I went, oh, okay, well, that works. I mean, may have been selling tool, I don't know, but he just said, he was a very experienced,
Right,
very experienced.
right. What did you say?
I say I think that's what the agent would want to hear, just exactly doing.
So, and naturally, that's what the seller wants to hear.
Yeah,
Is, that they can get out at any time. But I think we do ourselves a disservice. I mean, you ended up being happy, which is great.
yeah.
But I think that we do ourselves a disservice.
Well, I ended
you
up
can get-
selling it myself, but I personally had to give him a commission because he wasn't available, so I showed it.
Oh my God.
I know, because I'm out
Oh
of
my
town,
God.
can you do all the, and I went, okay.
Okay, lots of bad there.
Yes, there's lots of bad there. He asked me to
You
show
should
it.
have, under a listing, you never should have been asked to do all that.
Yep, I know.
He should have arranged for someone to manage his business if he was going to be out of town.
Yep, I know, but it turns out that's the person that purchased the house. I was like, naturally. Well, I did a great job.
This is why I go back. Why do we have to be lazy? There's no reason you shouldn't go on vacation as realtors. There's no reason you shouldn't step away from your business for a few minutes. You need a break. Believe me, you'll need a break. But if you don't take care of your business, who's going to take care of your business? I think it's unrealistic to expect a seller who's paying you to sell their home to ask them to show their property.
Yeah, I know.
I think it is poor form. I think it is disrespectful, and I think it's unprofessional. How hard is it to say, Anwar, while I'm on vacation, will you watch my business? Anwar says, sure, of course I will. Great, here's the deal. If one of my customer calls and you show them property, I'll pay you $100. Is that acceptable? Yes, it's fine. If one of my customers wants to write an offer on a property you showed, then if you write it and negotiate it, I'll pay you 10%. Is that acceptable? Yes, it's acceptable. If you write it, accept it, take them through the inspections before I get back, I'll give you a 25% referral. Is that acceptable? Yes, it's acceptable. That's fine. If you write it, take it to closing, I'm gone for 6 weeks in Europe, and you end up closing it, you pay me a 25% referral. Yes, it's acceptable. How hard is it to sit down and have a conversation with someone you trust to say, if I'm gone, will you be me? Now, of course, it has to be someone you trust and that you can talk openly and honestly with, but it takes 20 minutes. It takes no time at all. When I first started, there was a young lady that sat behind me. We agreed that we would share whenever we were out of town. She would watch my business and I would watch hers. And we agreed, if this is what you do, this is what you get compensated. This is what you get compensated. This is what you get compensated. We knew exactly what it was. I took that person, when I was going away for a few days, I took that person to my sellers and said, I want you to meet Sharon. She'll be handling my business while I'm gone. If you have any questions, please direct them to her. Why? I gotta get out of here for a minute. You calling me all the time is not gonna help me chill, right? So introduce them. What does that show? I've taken care of my business. I need to get away. You need to get away. I haven't left you in the hands of some unknown, I'm introducing you, we're talking about this, to ask a seller to show their own home is,
And then to sell the home, I mean, actually that's the purchasing party. I was like, really? Maybe I should get a deal. I didn't, but bottom line.
yeah. This is why we set you up with base policies and procedures, and you have to think about the rest of them. It's just like with teams. Before Buzz ever started his team, we said, okay, great, let's sit down because I need to know how you're going to manage your team. We have certain requirements of your team members, and we have certain requirements that you're going to place onto your team members, so we need to understand how that is and how it works and if we find it acceptable.
So Buzz works for Legends. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, Buzz is one of our agents. Buzz is one of our top 3 producers.
Okay. And he has a group underneath him.
He has a team. So anytime you have something like that, or anytime somebody's watching your business, it needs to be laid out, it needs to be in writing, because that's where the misunderstandings come
Yeah.
from. And you have to anticipate, if you want to be referred to somebody, now, I don't know if you ever would refer anybody to that person again, but if you would, that's fantastic. If you wouldn't, then I think it's in part because he put his responsibilities on you. Is that fair? Is that professional?
It truly wasn't, but it was, just, plus I was on my way to a, I don't know, very important meeting, and so I was late for that. Oh, God.
Well, there you go. Anyway,
Because they were lucky to have themselves. I'm learning so much.
oh, good.
Really,
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. But that's why we talk about this. That's why we spend time on this, because we want you to start anticipating situations. We want you to set a policy to how you manage things. We want you to know the tools that are out there, and we don't want you to be concerned about sharing them with your buyer or your seller. We want you to feel confident that when they have a situation they come to you with, you have a resolution, and that we can get it in writing so that everybody understands where we're moving forward, right? We want you to treat this like a business, and I think too many realtors don't. They just look at it as, oh, I'll do this part-time, I'll do this when I can, I'll do this if someone asks me. Oh, I want to have my license, so if someone asks me if I could help them sell a house, I can help them. That's when I get really nervous, because, and the only reason is because if they're doing it every 8 months, our forms change. They change every 3 years and in their entirety, and they change multiple times during those 3 years. The market changes. People's expectations change. Buyers change. Conditions change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Anyway. So here we are on page 1 still. On paragraph 1.
Oh, God.
So, but you can see, it's really important for me to make sure that you feel comfortable with understanding how to manage this timeline, because just like with a purchase and sale agreement timeline, there's a timeline to the listing.
This is very important.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Very.
So coming soon, just understanding some of the basic guidelines. Right now, it's a maximum of 14 days when you enter it into MLS. If you need a 1-week extension, you have to go to MLS to get it granted. There are no showings. No offers can be presented. Offers can be received, but no offers can be presented. You can advertise the property, but you must advertise it as coming soon. Advertising is a huge advantage to coming soon versus waiver of entry if you're trying to cover a period. Waiver of entry is no public marketing or advertising. Showings can occur. It is marketed realtor to realtor, and if it goes public, it must go into MLS within 24 hours.
So, if that realtor all of a sudden says, I will have an offer for you, we automatically put it to public, right?
No. This has nothing to do with offers.
You can't take an offer then if it's a waiver.
Here.
Right, I understand that. That one I get.
Yeah.
This one, you can't, it's only realtor to realtor that this thing's available.
No,
Then
it's only realtor to realtor for marketing.
for marketing.
Right.
But they can't get you an offer during this period.
Sure.
They can.
That's how you
Okay.
sell it.
Okay.
So I can have a house and let me block this.
Yeah.
I can have a house and waiver of entry
Okay.
and sell it. No problem. I talk to you, I say, Marco, I got this house. You think you got somebody? Yeah, I got somebody. Great, let's go. You bring your customer, we go. Fantastic, your customer likes it, they make an offer, we go under contract, fantastic.
Oh, so
Said and
I
done.
misunderstood that. It's showings are okay. It says okay.
Yeah, showings
Yeah,
are okay.
got it. Now I
Offers
got it.
okay.
I
Contracts.
didn't get. Well, I missed the showings part. I just thought it was realtor to realtor talking that it's gonna come up or whatever. Okay, showings.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we can go under contract, no problem.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. All fine.
Yeah.
The only thing that's missing here is public marketing.
Now
I
I
can
got
still
it.
sell it, I can still get paid.
Okay.
Whole
I
9
didn't
yards.
know what offers. Okay.
Just like you were saying with the however $1 million home, not ever wanting to hit the MLS, just selling it through word of mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No. I
But
just
still having showings, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
offers. Okay.
We-
I think
I'm
that
gonna add that to
no
my.
public buffer without no showing.
yeah, no, but showings are okay. So you met Jesse, right?
Yes.
Did you meet Jesse? Have you met Jesse?
Maybe I have. I'm sorry.
You may have.
What about her?
Jesse specializes in horse property.
Oh.
So she had one listing, 1.5 or 6. Horse property, traditional listing, market it, advertise it. 2 doors down, the sellers wanted to list with her and said, we don't want it in MLS. So she had to figure a way to market that property and not put it in MLS. So what she was doing was she found different avenues to go to reach out to realtors who specialized in horse properties, not only locally, but in other states,
Right.
and started talking to them about the property.
Yeah.
Do you have somebody? So, and then when people came to see her listing that was in MLS, she would talk to the realtor about the house available possibly 2 doors down. Would that be something of interest to their buyer? So she could do that, and it's not public. She's just talking to the realtor.
Realtor to realtor. Okay.
Right.
You know, with the horse community, like everybody here with the horse community. So
Yeah, it'll become public very quickly.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, you didn't have to go public.
It took about 2 weeks, and she put it into MLS.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the seller's like, forget it. We need more activity. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It just depends on the seller. Depends on what their motivation is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get it now.
All right. So then we identify. We're doing okay. Does anybody need a break?
I'm good.
Okay.
Do
All
you
right.
need a break?
Yeah.
No.
You've been doing all the talking.
I know. Sorry.
No, it's hard.
Yeah.
All right. So then we identify whether the property is or is not the seller's principal residence. Notice there are 2 spaces for them to initial. If you have, they have to acknowledge whether you've selected is or is not, and that that's accurate. 22 to 24 talks about the principal residence. So just as a reminder, if it is your primary residence and you are taking a homestead exemption, even if you bought the house yourself before getting married, your spouse now has rights to the property if you're living there as your principal residence. So they must sign the listing agreement. They would be responsible for signing the purchase and sale agreement when it comes to listing and selling the property. We want to identify the property. We would identify the property using the address itself, the county, the property tax ID, and the legal description. Exactly the same as one would on the purchase and sale agreement. So where do we get this information? You can get it from the deed, or remember
The county website.
the county? You can go to the county
Actually,
website.
He said something. I'm trying to remember the first time you were
MMT.
MMT.
MMT tax in MLS.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so when you're making an offer, it's already on MLS. You go find it.
Right. So it looks like this, and it comes
That's
right
wrong.
out of MLS. It's an application in MLS called MMT. It's called MMT tax, and you can pull up any property.
What is MMT stands for? Oh, I see.
Metro Market Trends. So you can pull up any property, and you have access to the major 5 counties that we cover. But notice what type of information is here. Not only is the parcel ID here, here's the legal description, obviously the address. You can see the owner, so you can compare the property address to the owner address to see if possibly not the same.
Right.
Maybe you have an investor, maybe you have. I love MMT because there are so many ways that you can strategically market through MMT. You can get a list of individuals who own 3 or more properties in that county. You can cross counties and get individuals who own properties in multiple counties. It's a great resource to create strategies. You can pull a list of people that have owned their home for 15 years or more, and their current value is Y number of dollars. So you can see sales history. The mortgage history shows when they bought the house, what was the mortgage that they got. So if they've refinanced, you won't see that. If they've put multiple liens on the property, you won't see that. You'll only see what the mortgage is at the time. But this next part right here, Liz Pendants filings, you can pull a whole list of properties that have had Liz Pendants filings. You all familiar with Liz Pendants?
No. Oh, Liz. Can you go over that?
Sure. So when someone has potentially stopped making their payment, the bank usually knocks on their door and says, "Hi, by the way, you owe us some money, you're getting behind, you have X period of time to pay us, or we're gonna start the foreclosure proceeding." And then it may go on for a little while longer. The bank may continue to reach out, the owner may continue to have difficulty, and at some point the bank says, "All right, it's time for us to begin the process of foreclosure." The process of foreclosure is started when the attorney for the bank sends a legal filing to the owner of the home indicating that they're moving forward with the foreclosure proceedings. That letter that is sent, which is also filed with the courts, is called a Liz Pendants filing. LISPENDENS. Liz Pendants filing. Right here.
Is that considered pre-foreclosure or actually foreclosure in publicly?
This is pre-foreclosure.
Okay, okay.
Foreclosure does not occur until the bank takes over the property.
Okay. So this is all okay.
Yeah. And pre-foreclosure, starting a foreclosure process with Liz Pendants filing, pre-foreclosure, is different from short sale.
Right.
Short sale, the seller says, "I can't pay you back what I owe you because I can't get enough money from the house.
Right.
And I don't have any additional money to make up the difference." And the bank says, "It's okay, go ahead and sell your house, pay us what you can, and then you'll have to deal with the ramifications, which are either a deficit judgment or a waiving of the deficit judgment potentially." But short sale, very different from pre-foreclosure.
Right.
And the saddest part is that at a bank, a seller could be talking to the short sale department saying, "This is what's going on, I'm marketing the property, I've got, great realtors involved, it looks like we're gonna get an offer, it looks like we're gonna be selling," and the pre-foreclosure department is doing their thing. They've sent the letter, they're letting you know, they're moving forward into courts, and they're moving forward to foreclose on you. The two departments don't talk. So we have had short sales with a contract and a scheduled closing date, and the foreclosure department comes in and takes the house 2 days before closing.
No.
No, so he's saying they can't take the property 2 days before closure.
I'm sorry?
He said they'll take the property 2 days.
Because the two departments
Don't talk.
don't talk, don't communicate, at the same bank, the short sale department may be moving forward with the short sale, agreeing, and the property may be under contract and scheduled to close, but no one's talking to the foreclosure department. So the foreclosure department goes ahead and forecloses, and it happens to be just a short time before it was actually supposed to close, and the bank would have gotten some money. Now they end up with no money.
As an agent, is that something we can do, is
Round and
relay
about.
between both and make sure that we're clear?
It is so difficult for the agent to do that because your business is listing and selling. In order to work between a short sale department and a foreclosure department, you have to be making multiple phone calls every single day. You would be on the phone all day long. This is why if you do run into a seller that is going to have to short sale their house, really recommend using an attorney or title company that deals with short sales and pre-foreclosures.
And is it in lieu of us or with us?
Not in lieu of you.
Oh.
No, you list the house. But you work with the title company or the attorney who's going to close it and let their short sale department manage the conversation between the short sale department at the bank and the foreclosure department at the bank.
Okay.
So you want somebody else dealing with that. You don't want that responsibility. I went and got certified to deal with short sales and pre-foreclosures. I won't do it. I'll counsel, I'll help, I'll manage, but you can believe that as soon as I get that property listed, it is going over to a title company or attorney that I trust that has a short sale department, and I'm gonna let them manage it because they can pull a property out of foreclosure. They
Oh.
can work with the bank to stay the foreclosure so that the property closes. I don't have the clout to do that. I don't do this every day. I don't know the judges. Every time I was calling, I was getting someone different and I had to start the story all over again. And then they would ask for all the paperwork that had been turned in long ago. So it is I don't want to say waste, but it's not an effective use of your time.
So, you have a seller, you have to sell a house, you put it on it, you already go on the contract, you put it on the then you realize it's in the foreclosure process. Is there anything different? Do you start the short sale process? What do you do?
Well, when you first you want to look at this before you ever list the house, but you want to check with them and say, I received some information that shows that you may have had a pre-foreclosure filed against you. Do you remember getting a letter or anything? Oh yeah, I did, but it was over something different, and it was a $500, and I paid it off. Okay, great. Do you have that payoff just so we can make sure we're all okay? Because the minute it gets to the title company, and the title company begins their search, that's when you'll find out that there's a big problem.
So you want to get that clear before you get around the contract?
Well, if they can. I mean, if it was a pre-foreclosure filing, or if there was les pendants filing to begin the foreclosure process, and they've bought it out of foreclosure, unfortunately, this won't tell you that they bought it out of foreclosure. They'll need to show you that they bought it out of foreclosure. This is why when you list a house, you really need to have an idea, or you need to ask the seller if they have an idea of what attorney or title company they would like to close with. If they don't, then you need to make a decision, but you need to get the paperwork over to them as soon as possible. You need to talk to that attorney or title company as soon as possible so that they can begin maybe pulling their initial title search, which would push up any red flags, so that if the seller wasn't aware, or if the seller didn't tell you, you could go back to the seller and say, I know this is a tough conversation, but the title company on their initial pull has found this lien against your property? Are you aware of it? You gotta get everybody involved to figure out how we wanna go ahead and resolve this. This is why you always wanna do your research on the listing. You wanna check sales history in MLS. Check tax record history in MMT, which you access through MLS. You wanna have frank conversations with the seller. Do you have a copy of your deed? Do you have a copy of any permits that you've pulled for work done on your property? Are you aware of any work done on your property without permits? I mean, you have to have very frank discussions. I mean, it's like a temporary marriage. I mean, you guys are getting into bed together without, being crude. And you guys got to know as much about each other as possible during the conversation. Because remember, who's going to know the most about the property other than the seller? It should be you. You should be able to talk effectively, efficiently, and concise with any questions that come up on that property. And if they come up and you don't know the answer, the first person you go to is the seller. I see a question over there.
Well, I was just thinking, because this happened with a customer client. Coming in from Boynton Beach, I was on the easy side. She was on the side where suddenly they had to pay all this money for permits that they, and let me ask you how this comes up. So she had to say to her client down at that end in Boynton Beach, show me all the improvements, right? And he didn't pull permits. So at that point, her responsibility being a listing agent was to then say, we got to go to the county and say, these were never pulled. And he ended up paying a huge amount of money he was very unhappy about at the last second, so this is all done. She should have done this really right off the bat. Is that what you're really, because they had a 30-day close. Thank God I got the other end of this. But I just had to, but if in fact I was told all these things, permits weren't pulled, we're talking about items, I know you told me once, $25 and up, but that doesn't really make too much sense, right? We have to really go into the things that are about $1,500, you said, to about $5,000 at that point, or even higher. Yeah? So I then have to say to them, we have to disclose this. Do you want to just, because I've seen it on contracts where it's non-permitted. So, I don't know what my responsibility at that point is.
Your responsibility always is disclose.
To the potential buyers.
To everyone. So if you're the listing associate, you would be disclosing it to every other realtor, every potential buyer.
Right. And I've seen it even in listings, non-permitted, whatever.
Usually in private remarks, but yes.
In private, whatever. So at that point, do I have to go to the county and say to them, we need to pay for this or get a permit or no?
You have to figure out how to resolve it. Yeah, you have to give the seller options to resolve this.
Okay, as a listing agent, and they said, I don't want to pay for permits, I don't want to, you can disclose it. Whose responsibility is then to go to the county, because this is what happened down to my other client, who actually in the listing agent said, suddenly we have all these things he owes. He pulled no permits. She did, I guess it was more that maybe she made a mistake of not even saying this was not permitted. Maybe that was her mistake. I don't know.
Well,
this part I don't know.
So when you list a property, you have a bunch of responsibility. This is why I say when you go in and interview for a listing, you need to go in with feature benefits of why they want to work with you.
Right.
You need to ask all the right questions. So if in your interview process it doesn't come up that there weren't any permits pulled,
right,
and you are going to go ahead and list, you probably should have checked the county permitting site.
Oh boy. Okay.
to see if any permits were pulled
Okay.
for anything.
You're right.
The last time the roof was done, the last time electric was done, the last time plumbing was done, the last time AC was done. All of those require permits.
Right.
So you're right about the $25. Technically, anything $25 or more in value, you're supposed to have a permit for. That would mean that if I, the owner of a home, wanted to change a ceiling fan, because that's electric, I should have a permit to be able to do that. Why? Because the value of the ceiling fan is most likely over $25, and the cost to install a ceiling fan by a professional would definitely be over $25. But the city is not looking for those kinds of things. The
Right.
city is looking for the addition of a deck, the addition of a room, the enclosure of a room, the addition of onto a home, renovation of a kitchen, renovation of a home, renovation of a bathroom. They're looking for anything that touches, impacts electric, plumbing, heating and cooling, roof,
Right.
structure. They're looking for any of those kinds of things. So a good thumbnail to go by is, if it was going to cost $2,500 or more to do, there should have been a permit.
Right.
So if I choose to put my own roof on, and the materials are going to cost me $5,000, but I'm going to do it, I should still get a permit to do it.
Right.
If I choose not to, then I have to be prepared to handle the responsibility. So now if I go to sell the house, I either have to, one, disclose I did not pull a permit for that,
Right.
or if I don't disclose, I have to be prepared for what might happen. Some buyers are okay taking houses that didn't have items permitted. Either they're planning on doing something themselves,
Yeah.
or they're willing to take it without the permits. If a buyer is willing to take a house without permits after it's been disclosed to them, then customarily there is a hold harmless document that is prepared by an attorney that a buyer and a seller sign, indicating,
Oh, okay.
I'm aware,
All right.
I'm buying the house anyway. This happens often with investors or cash buyers who are buying properties to either fix up for themselves or fix up flip or fix up and rent. Is a house could be in great disrepair, and they anticipate doing all of these things to it, and they know that whatever was done to it to date wasn't permitted, but they don't care. They're putting a new roof on, they're putting new plumbing in, they're putting new electric in, and they're going to do what's right and have the permits pulled.
Right.
But your responsibility as a listing agent is to disclose any material effect that affects the value of the property to all parties who have a vested interest. And that would be other realtors, potential buyers, and even other sellers. So where it comes up is, oftentimes if it's not disclosed and people just move forward, oftentimes it comes up when the new homeowner attempts to do something to the house that they would like. For example, we had a house that was listed and sold. It had 2 rooms that were added on, and the new owner wanted to add a deck, and so hired a company to do the deck. They came out to check, the city came out to check, to permit the deck, and said, we can't move forward with okaying this permit because neither of these rooms were permitted when they were done. So the new homeowner said, well, okay, so what do we do now? And they said, well, we can permit these, but they both have to be brought up, both rooms have to be brought up to code, and you're gonna have to pay a fine because they weren't permitted when they were done. So the buyer sued the brokerage.
Okay.
The brokerage bought the house back for what the buyer paid for the house because it was in the first year. The brokerage then had to tear off both rooms, rebuild them to code using permits. The cost to do that was $40,000. The original house sold for $82,000. Once those rooms were redone to code, the house sold for $82,000. A $40,000 loss because someone didn't permit what they had done. Because here's the deal, when they enclosed those rooms, they did a nice job. but the code changed from when they did it to when they sold the house. An example would be outlets. When they did it, outlets were required every 12 feet. The current code when the house was sold to the buyer was every 6 feet. So now the rooms didn't meet code. Therefore, in order to bring it to code, they had to kind of eliminate what was there and start back over.
So as a listing agent, they tell you something that they said, I'm not willing to go ahead and permit this, but this is what I did. I enclosed the patio,
Okay.
an example. But I did it, my husband's very handy, and he did it. So, all I have, my responsibility is to just disclose that, but I'm just still wondering why my client that I got ended up with all these bills. I mean, he was moving into the new house, and suddenly they said, you owe, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500 in fees for permitting. That, I mean, he added a barbecue or something really not big time, you know what I mean? Just a built-in barbecue back there.
Right?
But when did that come up? I mean, why would that, because he didn't disclose it, or because the listing agent didn't look for permitting, or when would you be looking for this?
Well, you would be looking for it when you list the house.
So let's just say it just looked like a barbecue in the back. The listing agent doesn't say, oh, was that permitted? And they didn't tell you it was permitted.
Well,
How does that come up?
A city's not going to ask for a permit for a movable barbecue. So I have a feeling it was
built
more
in.
than...
It was built in.
Right, right. So when you sell a house, that triggers a couple of different things. Remember, the city is notified when you sell a house, right?
Right,
Because they reassess the house for current taxes.
right.
Well, they may also survey the property, or you've already had this property surveyed, they may ask for a copy of the survey. Or they may drive out to the house because it's a new sale and see what the house looks like compared to what they have on record.
That's when it happens, okay.
So if they do that and they see that there's something there that wasn't there the last time they looked, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 22 years ago, they're going to say, this doesn't look like this, therefore something was changed. That change was a summer kitchen,
All right,
a very basic summer kitchen. However, that basic summer kitchen was supposed to be permitted. So here's the deal. If you want to keep that summer kitchen, you have to pay for the permit to have it installed, plus a fine for not having it permitted when you had it done. And your buyer is probably saying, well, I didn't do it, I bought it with it,
yep,
why is it my responsibility?
yep,
Because it came with the house. Permitting goes with the house, just like leases go with the house. So the owner is responsible. So just like in our purchase and sale agreements, it says, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, if you have any concern about anything, you're welcome to go to an attorney, you're welcome to have any other inspections and investigations done, and that's why you have that 10-day window to do all of your inspection investigations. It says right there in the purchase and sale agreement, the things you should be looking for are the systems working? What's the square footage? Can you get insurance? What's the cost of insurance? And it says right in there, permitting. Is everything
so
permitted?
that inspector, does he automatically look up to see if the permits were, no, he doesn't.
Not all of them do. Some of them do, not all of them do. So who does it fall to?
Well, it falls to the seller, but it will eventually go to us because we didn't do enough. That's
You didn't
scary.
do your job.
But what if they just
Nice.
weren't honest with you? I mean, they never even divulged that to you.
Okay, look, buyers are liars and sellers are too. It's not they intend to be, nor is it vindictive. In most cases, people don't know.
Right.
People believe I can do whatever I want to my house. Absolutely. If you want to screw up the electrical in your house and set it on fire, that's totally up to you. If you want to screw up the plumbing so your toilets don't flush, that's totally up to you. But here's the deal. The city has a responsibility to the community. So the city sets guidelines for how things are supposed to be done. If you want to do it, you have every right to do it, but the city has to come out to make sure that you're doing it right so that it doesn't hurt other people. If you screw up your electric and your house burns down and now you burn down 2 houses next door and the one after that, is it the insurance company's responsibility or is it your responsibility because you didn't do it right? It's your responsibility. So, as listing associates, we have to take our job seriously. Again, I know I'm old-fashioned, but here's the deal. When you list a house, you own the house. You're responsible for making sure that house looks good for every single showing. You're responsible for making sure that that house has every opportunity to get the best value for the house that exists and for the seller that's trying to sell.
But if I put in the listing agreement, this is a non-permitted room, I've done my duty, or do I have to go the next step? And the surveyor comes in and I say it's non-permitted. I mean, what?
Your job is disclose, disclose, disclose.
That's it, right?
Correct. So if you have the seller fill out the seller's disclosure,
Right.
and you review it, here's what happens all the time. An agent has the seller fill out the seller's disclosure and never reads it.
Oh,
So when a seller fills out a seller's disclosure, you have a responsibility to read it. And if you see something on there that causes you some concern, you have 2 choices: disclose or fix. Whatever the fix is.
right.
Physical fix, monetary fix, whatever the fix is, you have to fix it. If fixing it is disclosing it, then that's your resolution.
Okay.
So you disclose it in private remarks. I'm sorry. You go.
Just put on the remarks, like disclosure, write it down. But I don't think you need like call them, open can of worms, go by the way the roof doesn't have plumbing. As long as they have that disclosure, you're protected.
I'm
Does that make
protected.
sense?
Yes, to some degree. You've done what you're supposed to do by disclosing it to the other party. The seller's done what they're supposed to do by disclosing it on a seller's disclosure or disclosing it to you. You were gonna say?
Right, as long as you have an agreement, it's disclosures. The other party needs to take the responsibility to review, the document.
Well, you need to take the responsibility to review the documents. You should also be doing your due diligence. Just like when a buyer buys a home, when you list a home, you have a due diligence. If I'm going on an interview, you can bet I'm going to the tax record to look. I'm gonna go right into here and I'm gonna look, what does this house look like drawing wise here? And now I'm gonna go, when I get there, I'm gonna look to see, does it look the same? Or is there something different? When I go walking through this house, if there's a room here, you can bet I'm gonna start asking questions. If something is different, I'm gonna ask questions. I'm probably gonna go to the county tax record. Excuse me?
That's when you have to be honest and disclose it.
Well, that's when you just have to ask questions and then the seller has to be honest.
Yeah, but not always. The sellers are gonna be honest. And they, as you say, they may not even know. They
But
might,
that's your job then to educate them.
yeah. And then once you educate them, they can then say this is non-permitted, put it in the listing.
So, and there are so many ways. So, they fill out a seller's disclosure. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Oh, great. So the roof was done 3 years ago. Fantastic. That's a great selling point. I'm going to use that in my marketing. You didn't notate what roofing company put the roof on. Do you remember who it was? I want to make sure that the warranty still exists and that we can still use it. Oh, I did it myself. Oh, fantastic. Did you abide by the warranty? What warranty? Well, did you install it per the instructions from the roofing company? Because if you didn't, you may have violated the warranty. We may have to figure out how to manage that. And while I'm thinking about that, were you able to get the permit fairly easily? How much did you have to deal with the city for the permit? Well, I just put it on. I just went to Home Depot, I bought the shingles, I put it on. Ooh, okay. I gotta be honest with you, we may have a little bit of a challenge here. Something like a roof does need to be permitted by the city. What do you mean? I can put my own roof on? Absolutely, and I'm not saying you did anything wrong. What I am saying is that the city needs to know that that's there and that it was put on correctly. How do you feel about going down to the city and getting a permit for your roof? What's it going to cost me? In all honesty, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the current charge is for a roof permit, and I don't know if there's going to be additional costs. But I have to have this conversation.
Yeah, no, I get that. You want
Because then I have to say, well, Ms. Seller, here's the deal. I have to disclose that the roof wasn't permitted. No, you don't. I put it on. No, I have an obligation. I must disclose anything that materially affects the value of the property. A roof materially affects the value of the property and could potentially infringe someone's ability to get insurance. We have to disclose this. Okay. So now what do you want to do? Great, disclose it. Okay, great. So that you're aware, we may run into a problem because if someone is using financing to buy this house, they may not be able to get it. We're probably going to have to focus on cash buyers. Definitely not FHA or VA. So as long as you present to the seller what the options are, you're open and honest, you make sure that they know that you have an obligation to disclose, you're doing everything that you possibly can. And at some point, you may have to say, Ms. Seller, I don't think I'm the person for you. We don't have to take every single frickin' listing. And it drives me crazy that we feel that we do.
Okay, interesting.
So in that case, refer it to a different agent. Try and cut the referral fee.
I'm not going to refer it even to my worst enemy. The seller has a different motivation that I don't think is appropriate. Sorry. Let's say that doesn't fit my business model, and I'm not going to ask someone else. If I'm going to try and raise the bar of our industry, I'm not going to ask someone else to take it, because now if they find someone who's willing to take it, that's up to them. I probably won't be showing that property. Guys, we've got to set a standard for how we do this. It's no wonder people think that we're just below or above a used car salesperson.
Oh, I believe in that. And one person reflects on the other person in a company too.
Absolutely.
So it's very important that everybody kind of hold the standard.
I
I just feel like I don't have all the information, so it's like, oh God.
And it's okay not to have all the information. I'm sorry I interrupted you. You were going to say
I
something.
think you're trying to protect yourself, without the public. So I mean, like you said, as long as you disclose it, put it on paper, be honest, I think it'll be fine. Right?
But then the surveyor comes out or something like that, or a roofing inspector comes out and says, this hasn't been permitted, then they're kind of stuck, they have to make a decision then too.
But they can still close, am I right? If they allow it.
If
But
fine.
insurance, you have to make sure that insurance will cover. Yeah.
Or financing.
Now, why would because I understand the whole process to the end though, but why would the financing will pull out because it's not a permitted roof?
Potentially, sure. Financing is going to look to make sure that there's insurance. Insurance is going to look to a 4-point, right? If an insurance company won't cover because of what it says on the 4-point inspection, the lender's not going to lend.
Gotcha.
So it's not that the lender says, did you get the 4-point? The lender says, did you get insurance?
Yeah.
And the buyer says, sorry, I didn't get insurance. The lender says, well, tough titties, excuse me. Tough toenails, I'm not giving you your loan.
Gotcha.
But now you have to think about this. What was the reason for loan denial? Because now the buyer's backing out, right? And if it's past the inspection period and they're backing out, or it's past the loan approval period and they're backing out, did they default or did they not default?
Right. Then
Does
you
the
have
seller truly have an opportunity to keep their binder or not? Well, the fault of them backing out was because of an issue with the house that they couldn't get insurance. Can the seller lay a claim to the binder? Probably not. Right? So we have to know each step and
man.
how each thing impacts the other.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that they really truly couldn't get financing, right?
Right. It was
It was
through
the
the
seller
reports.
didn't do something.
Right. 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 Mm.
We're going into a binder dispute right now because a buyer went under contract with the seller here in Florida. They wrote the offer contingent upon the sale of a house in Georgia.
Yeah.
The house in Georgia was under contract. The buyer for the house in Georgia was using stock to buy the house as part of their loan.
You use what?
Stock.
You stocks buy a house. Oh, stocks. Okay.
Stocks.
Stocks.
I'm sorry.
No, I spelled out.
I was just,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So that got delayed. That Georgia sale got delayed. The buyer in Florida here had written the offer contingent upon the sale of the home in Georgia. However, when the agent asked for an extension, they asked for an extension based on closing. They
Yeah.
did not ask for an extension based on loan approval. Right? So the loan was never denied because they didn't sell the house in Georgia. The closing was extended 3 times, but the loan approval was never extended. So once they ran out of the loan approval period, just because they didn't sell or close in Georgia,
Right.
their loan approval period wasn't extended. They're saying they wrote the offer contingent on the sale of a home, therefore, since that one in Georgia didn't close, they get their binder back. We're saying, I'm sorry, your loan approval period expired, which means the contingency of sale expired. You never requested an extension on the loan approval period, only on the closing date. And the lender sent the money to the attorney anticipating a closing, therefore they must have assumed that it was okay to close without the closing of your home in Georgia.
Oh.
So now we have a dispute over the binder because what the buyer is saying, but I wrote it contingent on the sale. No, you wrote your loan approval contingent on the sale. Your loan approval period ended. You never extended the loan approval period,
Right.
nor the contingency on the sale. You only extended the closing date. And your lender provided funds
So
and no denial.
so it never closed, period?
Never closed.
And why did it not close then? Why wouldn't the seller just go, well, I'll have to just wait it out here a little bit?
Well, they extended the closing 3 times,
And so forget how.
and that house in Georgia never closed.
Oh, the house in Georgia never closed.
Oh, it was
But our contract isn't with the house in
Right,
Georgia.
right. No, I
Our
get
contract is with the buyer here,
that. Right.
who said it was contingent on the sale of the home to get loan approval. They never extended the loan approval period. They never provided a letter of loan denial, and the bank provided funds to the title company, anticipating a close.
So it seems like they got the code to close because they were saying that the lenders can lend.
The lender provided funds.
They
The
can't.
buyer had to come up with the remaining funds.
Oh,
Mm.
Because
that's
there's
a
no
problem.
contingency.
Okay.
They were trying to
Buyer.
get the money from the sale of their house in Georgia.
Without a contingency.
The contract.
Well, no, the original contract was written contingent on the sale of the house in Georgia. However, the agent never extended the loan approval period. So once the loan approval period ended, which ended the contingency of sale of home, it wasn't a matter of closing because they had a sale or
So
didn't have a sale.
So, here's a card. The lender contingency that goes with the sale of the home. You have to extend that to make it contingent on the sale of the home.
Right. So if I ask for a loan approval period I'm asking for a period of time to ensure I get my loan. I disclosed to you that one of the reasons that I need to get a loan, or one of the contingencies for me to get a loan, is to sell my house.
But if you want to sell a house, no matter what, they should wait until the house gets sold.
How could you have
Like,
prevented this issue?
For example, okay, I have a side-by-side trapper to sell, and if I make an offer on this house, but then I do a seller financing offer on this house, so that was traditional loan and seller financing, and I would say, okay, the seller financing will go through, but I want to make sure my bank, I want to make sure I be able to get a loan on this property. So I'm trying I'm not.
Well, you're
Basically,
if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying I want to buy both as a buyer, and the contingency I'm going to write is I've got to get the loan in order to buy both properties. That's not a contingency on the sale of a house.
I guess I'm using the wrong example. I'm just saying, like, if anybody wants to sell a house, if anyone wants to sell a property, but we want to make sure that they sell this house for any reason, it shouldn't be related to the loan. It should be contingent on the house. It should not be related to the loan. Because if that house didn't sell, I want to buy this house. Does that make sense?
I understand that what you're saying is I don't want to buy a new house until my old house sells.
Why? That's what contingency on the sale of the home means.
But that's in the loan approval period.
That's
If you want to extend your loan approval period, remember, the sale of your house is a contingency within your loan approval period.
So I make sure, me as an agent, I have to make sure I have to extend the loan approval to make sure the sale of the house will be successfully closed.
So if I haven't sold my house and I'm running up against the end of my loan approval period, then I need to extend my loan approval period in order to close on my new house, in addition to the extension of the closing. Either that, or I have to get a letter of loan denial saying I can't buy this house and get out of the contract.
But in this situation, you just mentioned that the lender can lend, that they were giving funds.
The lender provided funds to the closing attorney. Yes,
Even without the Georgia house not selling.
even with the Georgia house not selling.
Exactly.
Oh, so why did the guy
So
want to get out?
basically, to be on the safe side, have contingency extended on both the house and the
The
lender.
closing and the loan approval period.
Right, right.
Did he only ask for a loan of a specific amount, not to cover the full debt?
When,
I think he's just trying to fill in
I
the
just want to
gap.
make sure me as an agent to be safe, to make sure I'm protecting my
Right, right, right.
and my seller.
so remember, if we go back to the purchase and sale agreement, there's a timeline. The buyer's obligated to perform per the timeline of the contract. If I have 30 days to get loan approval, everything that I'm supposed to do, I need to do within that 30-day period. For the bank to say, we're gonna give you a loan. If I don't get the approval from the bank that says you're good to go before 30 days, I need to either one, ask for an extension, or ask to cancel the contract. One of the contingencies to get loan approval in this example is sell a house. So if I don't sell my house within that loan approval period, I've either got to ask for an extension in the loan approval period or ask to get out. our position is you didn't ask for an extension in the loan approval period. You asked for an extension in the closing. You didn't say, I got denied within my loan approval period because I didn't sell my house. You just said, I think we're gonna still close, can we extend the closing? And we agreed to extend the closing. You never extended the loan approval period. And you didn't provide a letter of loan denial. Ever. Therefore, you were out of contract
Yeah.
and didn't close and defaulted,
Mhm.
so the seller gets your money.
Yeah.
Their position is, we had a house to sell. We extended the closing so that we could sell the house, but we never sold the house, therefore you can't ask for our money. And our position is, but you never extended the loan approval period. So why would we think that you still had to sell your house?
Right.
And to support the fact that you didn't have to, your bank went ahead and sent the money.
Word.
I mean, that's ancillary.
Yeah.
Word.
The base is, you needed to sell your house to get loan approval. You didn't sell your house within the loan approval period so that the bank would give you approval. You asked to extend the closing, you never asked to extend the loan approval period. Therefore, you defaulted. We'll see what the Florida Real Estate Commission says.
Very interesting.
This is what I do all day.
So that's the fault
I don't know, I
of
just think
the
it's
realtor,
fun.
yeah, really, the broker.
Yes,
Yes.
it's the fault of the realtor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I still think they have a strong case because it was contagious on the house, regardless of the long one through or not.
The loan approval was contingent upon the sale of the house.
And the house didn't sell. So,
So the loan approval.
They had the choice. They could say the house didn't sell, so we would like more time to get loan approval. And the seller on our side could have said, sure, we'll give you more time to get your loan approval to sell the house. But they didn't ask for it. They asked to extend the closing, not the loan approval period.
So they extend it and they say, okay, I got the loan, it's good to go, but my house still didn't sell and I'm still in contingency pay on my down. Even though they got the loan.
Then the approval wasn't contingent upon the sale. That's our other position, is your bank gave the money, so they obviously felt that you didn't need to sell your house to get the loan.
yeah, that's interesting too.
I don't know, it's very interesting. 'Cause like say I want to move to Bahamas. I don't want to manage this property anymore. I want to contingency on this sell. I want to make sure this one's sold before I move to Bahamas.
Great. If it didn't sell by the time you're end of your loan approval period, ask for an extension in your loan approval period. Or get a letter of loan denial from your bank.
But that's what I'm saying. The loan's gonna go through. The loan's still gonna go through.
If that's a contingency, it should be honored.
If the
If
contingency,
it's extended. If it's extended. Or needs to be
if the loan approval period is extended, if the seller agrees to extend the loan approval period, they're extending it based on the fact that you haven't sold your house.
Right.
I'm very curious. Let me know how that one goes.
Yeah. It's an interesting
Well-
topic.
Okay, so when you get a loan, you have to qualify for the loan, right?
Right.
So there are certain requirements that the bank has for you to qualify for a loan. Some may say you have to have a credit score of X, some may say you have to have a certain amount of money in the bank, whatever. One contingency may be you have to sell your current home.
Right.
The way our purchase and sale agreements are written, if you have to sell your current home to buy the home you're writing an offer on, you have to disclose that.
Oh, so that wasn't this case?
They disclosed it. in order to buy the new house, we have to sell our current house. So we're
Contingent.
asking for a loan approval period of 30 days to go ahead and get our house sold and remove that contingency from the requirement from the bank. And the lenders or the seller said, sure. You've got 30 days to either get your house under contract and sell it, and then move forward with me to close, or we're out. So the bank didn't provide loan denial. The buyer never asked for an extension in their loan approval period. So I get that you wanted to sell your house before you were required to buy a house, but then you have an obligation. You have an obligation to extend your loan approval period.
But what if it wasn't based on financing? You could afford a second home, but that's not your intention. You would have a contingent based on just your own desire to only own one home at a time. Not
That's
based
right.
on financing. So would
Okay.
it be a different verbiage that you would use, or?
Well, yes, you would have to have the contingency. Are you getting a loan or is it all cash?
A loan. I mean, either way. I don't know if it would.
Well, no, if it were cash, then you would write a separate contingency to sell a house before buying, and it wouldn't be part of your loan approval period. It would be a separate contingency in the contract.
Right, that's
So
what
that's what I'm
I'm
saying. So you can do both. You can have the loan period and separate contingency. That
Just a
way-
personal desire, not based on a financial contingency.
Right.
Yeah. So that was
That's an
it.
option.
Yeah.
That
You
has
just
to
made
be
it more
option.
difficult with the seller, but yeah.
That's what I was trying to understand. So now, their case, he didn't provide that.
Right. So
I just don't get how the bank already put the money in when this was the agreement that they had to sell that house for a loan approval, yet the bank sends all the money anyway. That seems weird to me.
well, the bank didn't feel that they needed to sell.
Yeah, but that's not what the contract said. It said you need loan approval, you must sell your house before you get loan approval.
No, that's not what the contract says. The contract states that they need to sell a house
Sell their
as
house,
part of their loan approval.
right. They must sell their house as part of loan approval, yet the bank all sent the
Or
money
for,
anyway.
should I say for loan approval?
But the bank sent it anyway. The whole kit and caboodle. That's weird. I've never heard of the bank doing that.
Yeah.
But anyway, these things will come up. You just have to go to him.
Yes. That's
So
right.
if you look at the purchase and sale agreement, here's what it says. Financing information. I'm gonna get a loan.
Right?
Great. My loan is marked below with a financing contingency. It is conditioned upon the closing of the sale of real property,
Okay.
right? If neither box is marked, loan approval is not conditioned upon the closing of the sale of other real property. Therefore, if the box is marked, loan approval is conditioned upon the sale of other real property, right?
Yeah.
So that would mean that when I identify a loan approval period, my loan approval period is 30 days.
Right.
When I identify that, I've either got to make sure that the bank will give me the money by the end of the 30 days
Right.
if my house hasn't sold.
Oh.
So if my house hasn't sold,
Makes sense now.
and I'm coming to the end of my loan approval period, I either need to say, I need more time, or the bank has got to say, we're denying your loan so that you can either get out of your contract
Right.
or figure out how to do this differently, or they have to say, we're okay with you not selling your house. But it has to happen within the loan approval period.
Okay, that's the part I didn't know. Okay. Got it.
This has to happen in the loan approval period.
Right.
Remember,
And so what, did the guy just really wanted to get out of this since he just didn't want to hold two homes is what the deal was, huh? Who knows?
I don't know. What we believe is that the lender that he chose told him he has to sell the house in Georgia to be able to buy the house in Florida. He wrote it into the offer. I have to sell a house to buy a house. I have to figure that out within the loan approval period. Since I can't, I have one of two choices: extend my loan approval period or get out.
Yeah.
In order for me to get out, based on the loan approval period, the bank has to provide me with a letter of loan denial. The bank didn't provide a letter of loan denial. Buyer didn't ask for more time for loan approval. They just asked for more time to close.
So, yeah.
So they believed, the buyer believed, and all documents were signed up in Georgia, but the buyer of the Georgia property never provided the money. So it was never an official closing. But that doesn't impact our contract.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, did you say you were representing the buyer or the seller?
We have the seller.
You have the
Seller.
seller.
I figured you had the seller.
Yeah, we have the seller.
Because you don't want to give back the binder.
Yeah.
So the seller is saying, look, you didn't close. I'm entitled to the binder. The buyer is saying, but you knew it was contingent on the sale of a home. We knew your loan approval was, but you've never provided loan
No,
denial.
I get it. I get it. No, I get it.
So why would we think that you can't afford the house? Well,
Right.
because I didn't sell my house in Georgia, but you never asked to extend your loan approval period, and your bank sent money. So why would we think that you can't close?
Yeah. Something else was cooking there.
And
Because he could have closed.
again, this is what I get to deal with every day.
Okay, I wouldn't want to do that job.
You know.
No. You got to be an attorney.
It's interesting.
Mm.
And I don't know where it will land, but
Is it a huge, huge binder?
just 10,000.
Oh.
I mean, I know that's a lot of money, no matter how we look at it, but the house is a $1.2 million
Yeah,
house.
see, you got
Oh, wow. Only 10,000?
And that was one of the other problems.
Wow. Should have been like 20, 30.
50.
If you're 50, oh wow.
This is why we know that, and this is one of those other things you gotta counsel your buyers on. I know that we're talking about listings, but this helps you talk to your sellers. When a seller evaluates an offer, they need to evaluate all of the terms and conditions. What's one of the terms and conditions? The binder. The binder shows the intent or the desire, right?
Yeah.
This is why I hate that we do binders 3 days after acceptance. Because if you want to buy my house, you should be willing to put money up at the onset. Personally, I think that. However, I think when buyers ask us what type of a binder we should put down, I think we should tell our buyers you should put down a significant binder. And that would be 2, 3, or 4%, even up to 5%. On $1 million house, if they're putting down $500,000, there's no reason that they shouldn't be putting $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 down as a binder. They'll get the money back as long as they do what they're supposed to do, right? And we've seen more sellers take offers with higher binders, knowing that the buyer is more interested in the property.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta talk to them about all the aspects of this. I think too often we either are fearful of discussing all the different pieces, or forget, or try to rush, and then I think we misadvise in some cases, or don't advise. It's even worse. All of that in that discussion.
Wow. There's a lot though.
No, that's
That's
important
why I love
because
this,
that's where
because
we
it's all
could
those
screw up
circles.
though. you didn't extend the loan approval, which again, put you in a bind. Unless somebody knew something and said, you know, I just wanna get out of this, you know. I have another house, it's gonna, you know, something. I don't know what happened there. They obviously don't want that house.
No, they still want the house
They
here.
do? Okay. Okay.
Matter of fact, their brokerage is saying, oh, you know, we want our money back, but we still want to buy the house. Well, the sellers moved back into the house.
The sellers moved back in.
Yeah, seller had already moved out.
Oh, now that's even more interesting, yeah.
I would take you to court.
Well, and you know, that's what could end up happening. They're asking to do this by an escrow disbursement order to find out who
Yeah.
Florida Real Estate Commission thinks should get the money. Florida Real Estate Commission could look at this and say, take it to interpleader.
That's all.
It's like mediation or arbitration, where a third party makes the decision on what happens with the binder. But the difference between mediation, arbitration, and interpleader is that mediation and arbitration, the brokerage is customarily a party. In interpleader, the brokerage is not really a party to the dispute.
Oh, okay.
It's a true dispute between the two parties, the buyer and seller. But it will cost anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500 for interpleader. And of course, the monies come out of the binder first. So what ends up happening is if they refer it to interpleader, usually it ends up then becoming a negotiation. The brokerages end up negotiating with their parties to decide what's going to be acceptable to both parties. Otherwise, the monies can get eaten up very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of what I do. Negotiate binders.
You know, I thought maybe one day eventually I'm gonna open up my brokerage firm. But after all this discussion, forget it. I won't deal with it. Oh my God, he scared me away.
It's not all that bad. It doesn't
Oh my
happen
God.
all that frequently. However, I will say that it's happening much more frequently in this market with the number of agents that we have. When at the previous bubble, when we had about 7,500 agents, 7,200 agents,
You're talking 72 agents in what, in all of Florida or just this area?
Jacksonville, 7,200 agents in Jacksonville.
Oh my God.
Back in 2005, 6,
7,200.
right? Back in 2005, 6, right? When the bubble occurred
Yeah,
and burst,
yeah.
we went down to 4,500.
In just this area, that many agents. Oh my God.
Wow.
Margot,
Oh,
in the state of Florida, we have 255,000 realtors.
oh
In the entire U.S., we have 1,540,000
my God.
realtors.
Okay,
That
that's not.
doesn't include the realtors who have a license. Excuse me. That doesn't include the real estate professionals who have a license but are not a member of the National Association of Realtors.
Oh my God.
And there are some brokerages that are not members of the National Association
Right, I've
of
seen that.
Realtors.
They always send you emails every day, don't you?
But
get
when we
those?
went from 7,200 to 4,500, the number of complaints dropped exponentially.
Oh,
We're now at 12,000 realtors, almost 12,000 realtors in Northeast Florida. And as things constrain a little bit more or get tightened, it'll never happen like it did. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a drop. And both Florida realtors and NEFAR, in doing the budgeting for 2023, have reduced the number of realtors in our board and at the state. So we're anticipating a little bit of a drop. But I will tell you, we are getting every month still, most recent month, we just had our board meeting last week, and in the month of
12,000.
April, we had 138 new realtor members. 138.
138.
in 1 month.
Wow. How many agents do you guys have now?
If for NEFAR,
Oh, yeah. At that time.
oh no, we have 137
That's always good.
realtors.
Very close.
Yeah. So, but new realtors joining the board in April was 138,
And there's 12,000, did you say?
almost 12,000.
And the best part, we have you there.
You're very kind.
Well, he knows his stuff, and that's important, because I have to
Yeah.
kind of, I don't think all of them do.
Well,
I
it's
shouldn't
kind of
say, I
odd.
shouldn't
I'm just
say that
glad
about other
you're here.
people, but it's
I
really,
wouldn't be doing anything if it wasn't for you guys, so it's good. We're doing it together. All right, so your property description comes right out of MLS. Please note that you do have the right to sell a mobile home. We do not recommend selling mobile homes. If you are selling a mobile home, you do need the vehicle identification number. It is done very differently. You have to be very careful. Is the mobile home on a parcel of land that's leased? Is it owned? There's a lot of additional pieces to it. You can sell a mobile home that is on a parcel, and you can sell it like a residential property, but we do not sell mobile homes on their own.
on their own.
Yeah. Personal property, so you'll see that this is 1F in the listing agreement. It's paragraph 13 or 16 in the purchase and sale agreement, but it is written the exact same way. Anything that's attached or connected is intended to stay. If when you tour a home, there's an item that is in the first paragraph here, 33 through 39, if those items aren't in the home when you tour it, you don't have to scratch them out, because it states the following items, if owned and existing on the property on the date of the buyer's offer. If they're there when the offer is made and the seller owns them, then the intent is for them to stay. But you have to be aware of what items are included here, because when you're touring a home, you need to look for things that would or potentially could walk away. So things like draperies, window coverings, if you look down to the 4th line, you'll see drapery hardware, all window treatments. This means that when I'm in the home, if the carpet matches the drapes, if the drapes and the bedding are similar, and you know the bedding's not staying, you may want to question whether the drapes are staying. But the intent is that the drapes would stay. All window coverings, drapes, shutters, blinds, electronic, whatever you call it, electronic shades.
Yeah.
We'll call them shades. Electronic shades, anything, any window covering is intended to stay. That includes the rods, anything that's affixed, it's intended to stay. So you have to think about that when you're touring a home to list, because you have to ask the questions, do you intend on leaving those drapes? Do you intend on leaving those window coverings? Do you intend on leaving that light fixture that you talk so highly of? So we need to know that at the onset. And you might want to have a recommendation set. So, Mr. Ms. Seller, if you plan on taking it with you and someone would think that it stays, you need to replace it.
Can I also make a comment?
Absolutely.
This is what happened to me. Basically, it was in the MLS, in the remarks, what was included in addition to these sort of things. And one was shelving in this secondary building. And this secondary building was huge, so we're talking shelving, double shelving everywhere around.
Built in?
Locked it, yeah. That white, whatever, metal shelving.
But white metal shelving built in?
Well, nailed in,
Okay.
not built in. Like you have in your closets and stuff, those white things.
Right.
And it was in the MLS, saying, this additional building with shelving. I should have written it down here in other, and I didn't. I just didn't.
You didn't write the shelving.
and they took it. Even though it was in MLS saying includes, shelving, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, he took it. I just couldn't believe it. And so it was more of a discussion, and I had a really good client who just said, just let him have it.
When did you discover that it was gone?
When I was over there, because I met an inspector, and I went, where's the shelving? So I immediately called the agent and said, you have shelving listed in your MLS agreement, yet the shelving's gone. And so she said, let me talk to the owner, seller. And he basically said, oh, I didn't know that, and I just gave it away. He didn't give it away, but I know he didn't because he wasn't that type. And then I had to tell mine, should we make a fuss out of this or not? What should we do? Just let it go. Which I was
Okay,
lucky.
so your customer said, well, just let it go when given the option. What other options did you give them?
I said we can ask him to put to buy more shelving, do all this, and he just knew the guy because we both had met the individual, and he goes, no, this kind of guy's it's not gonna be easy to deal with,
So-
he thought he was giving his house away anyways at a much cheaper price than he really wanted, and so he understood the emotion behind this guy. But anyway, just remember that even if it's listed on MLS in the paragraph saying, oh, includes or has da-da-da-da-da, add it here. Because that would have
In
been...
your purchase and sale agreement, not
Correct, correct, in the purchase and sale agreement.
here. Right.
And I made that huge mistake.
Well, and I agree with you that we need to make sure that our offers are clear, concise,
Yes.
and full. I mean, complete. So
I
I
just
agree that we
assumed-
have to watch. So I think it's a learning. We take it as a
It was
learning
a learning
experience,
thing.
right?
Yeah,
But we also have to learn how to address them. So you addressed it with your customer and said, this is now gone. You have these options. And
talk to
you
the
gave,
agent. This
okay,
is
so
gone.
we've talked to the agent, he's taken it. Remember, your job is also to provide solutions. So Mr. and Ms. Buyer, we can do 1, accept it. 2,
Right.
ask them to replace it. Or 3, what would have been a third option?
Credit.
Absolutely.
He wouldn't do. We had
Right.
to know this guy.
Right,
He
but
he
the-
listed a washer and dryer, and then we get in there, and the washer and dryer has a big sign, this isn't working. So at that point, he replaced the washer and dryer, and then after that, he's going on doing one more thing. So we kind of knew, so we just.
I understand, but it's also our job to make
Yeah,
sure. So we
did
learn.
all that.
We learn to make sure we're clear, concise, and complete on the purchase and sale agreement. Same thing goes when you're listing. We have to ask all the right questions.
Right.
And that's why in something like that, a good job for the listing associate, rather than just putting it into MLS, would have been to write it in here.
Exactly.
Then the brokerage can go back to the seller and say, Mr. and Ms. Seller, you said you were leaving it.
Exactly.
You've now taken it. You have an obligation, and here are your choices. You
Exactly.
can buy new, you can put back, or you can replace.
Yes.
Credit,
Exactly. I made a mistake.
It wasn't that you made a mistake. You believed that what was there was accurate.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen that when on the MLS it's listed with this home will include a warranty, a home warranty. But this is their strategy, is that it's up to them when they're making the offer to include that, and if they don't, it was just an advertisement that they didn't choose to include, or they
That
assumed.
seems wrong.
But it's just, they also have the listing price, and you could change that as well. It could be,
Right.
whether they're aware or not, you have to be careful with how you present your offer.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
You have to give all aspects consideration and make sure that you're clarifying with your buyers what their expectation is. So that buyer may have expected the home warranty, but the associate didn't write it in, and they get to closing and there's no home warranty. Now guess who's buying the home warranty?
The realtor.
The realtor.
Nice
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
And actually that can be a fantastic gift.
I think it's a great gift because it covers
agree.
so many, like the refrigerator didn't work in this place, yet, I already told you about that. But I didn't bring a thermometer. I looked 3 times in that refrigerator every time I went over there, and it was on. And the first time there was food in there, so I didn't, and then when they moved out, yet the thing wasn't really working. You know, I just, you know, so I bought them a home warranty. I actually split it with the broker because I went, this is ridiculous. The guy kind of was squirrely about a lot of things. And so, and I picked up a little bit on it because he said, God, everything looked brand new, but I think he took it out of, I don't know, where he got a lot of his stuff. It was awful. You learn a lot. You learn a lot very quickly.
And that's why you have your community.
Yeah.
And your community is made up of your home inspectors that you trust, your repair people that you trust, your insurance people that you trust, all the different people, your loan officers, all the different people that you can go to get good, sound advice and strategy.
Right.
So you create your team, you create your community.
And your other agent is not necessarily your best
Source.
advisor. Because they may tell you something which really bothers me too, about that is not true.
They can.
They do. They say, oh yeah.
Regardless what MLS said, if it's on the law, it should come to the property.
Yep.
Because then if you worry about holes too, did he patch it? I mean,
It was in the shed, he didn't do anything.
oh, yeah.
But I think we talked about the sago palms.
Yes.
Didn't we talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah, you should tell me about it.
Yeah. $6,000. They're kind of attached in the ground.
Sometimes I make my decision about properties based on the trees. I mean, those are important.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So
Someone took out their sago palms?
That's what he was telling you.
God.
we had a house that was listed, had 2 beautiful sago palms, and the sellers took the sago palms while they were closing. So,
Right out of the ground.
While they're at closing.
and well, they had someone take them out while they were closing. And when the buyers got there, both the sago palms, and they were big, beautiful sago palms, and they flanked the walkway going to the house. So they were very pretty and very prominent. And when we got there, the sago palms were gone. So our first call was to the attorney to say, I need to let you know that the sago palms that were sitting here are gone. So we need to address this. And then next call was to a nursery to find out what is the value of a sago palm approximately 4.5 feet tall and approximately 3 feet wide. And they were $3,000 each.
Let me ask you this: was this before closing or after closing?
Literally while they were at closing.
At
So
signing
the
the papers?
day of closing, the sago palms were removed because they were there when we did the walkthrough the day before.
Okay, that's really bad. So when were you able to get to the so they signed the papers and everything?
Everybody signed, and we then went to the house to find no sago
So
palms.
how much, yeah, but how much, now that they own the property?
Oh, hi. I love your fancy,
Oh.
Oh,
Is that
thanks, yeah, we do what we can.
So you do have some, you can go ahead after closing and make some comments about things and bring something up.
Oh, of course. Because this is a contract. So if there was
But
an,
is it civil, then you have to go to civil
well, it
court?
depends on how far you can go. So if the attorney refused to do anything about the sago palms and the sellers refused to return them, then yes, the buyers could have sued through civil court.
Okay,
Because it was an element of the contract.
right. No, I was just
It
thinking.
even states in here, as well as in the purchase and sale agreement, line 38, fence, plants, and shrubbery, all as now installed.
Well, no, I was just wondering after it's closed like that and the title company, whatever, everyone's signed, I thought your only way of going back would be a civil suit. I didn't think you could go back to the title company and say, hey, look, this happened.
Well, you can go back to the closing attorney and see if they'll do anything, absolutely. And the attorney called on behalf of the buyers and said, you know, the buyers have arrived at the home and the 2 sago palms are gone. So you have 2 choices at this point. Either pay them $6,000 or return the sago palms.
Okay, what do?
They return the sago palms.
Those poor things may not make it.
No, they made it. They're still there.
They are. Oh God, that's awful. As if people.
So the important thing about personal property is just to remember, if it's there and it's installed, it's intended to stay, you really, really, really need to clarify with your customer what their intentions are. I think Margot's point about potentially writing in here the white shelving in the shed is good, because then you have something to go back in the listing agreement.
Yes.
Just like I highly recommend that if they're leaving the refrigerator, write down under other the manufacturer of the refrigerator and describe it. For example, side by side LG stainless steel refrigerator, so that the seller is clear, and even if things go a little awry as the transaction moves forward, you can always go back to the listing agreement and say, come on, I know you're upset about this, but putting the avocado green refrigerator from the garage into the kitchen is not appropriate. We agreed that that would stay. You need to leave that way. And you have to
I
pick a hard
totally
line
agree.
sometimes.
I totally agree with all of that. Even if you need another paper.
Yeah, even if you need another piece of paper. Absolutely. All right, so we're at about 1 o'clock. We'll stop here with terms and pick up from there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.